Hey my students, how you doing? Hope you having good day. In this video, I'm gonna talk about my student DEKU. What if DEKU lag quirk? So what he gonna do in battle, the man with quirky powers, so watch till end. And subscribe for more, also like this video, it helps me to stay motivate. And don't forget to check it author of the story and show some love, name of this fanfic is. A precise note by Sir Lucifer Morningstar. Let jump in video. Only after he received his quirk did he understand. Come down Mr. Sniffles. Come down. Please the feline atop the tree clung to its limbs. Cat claws penetrated wood at sharp angles to maintain stability. The young girl was at the bottom. More senior than he is. She had her middle school uniform pressed very well. She didn't have any unusual mutant traits that would have revealed her quirk, so she looked ordinary. Do you need some help? No, you idiot. Heroes merely act without question. What happens if she declines? What happens if she chuckles? She will chuckle. Perhaps I ought not to have she look nicer than he had imagined. He didn't realize she was thus close to his face. His heart was pounding quickly. It happened quickly. Too quickly. Close. Too near. His cheeks were ablaze. He desired to take a backseat. He was unable to back off. How would Kakin respond to this? You're a bit too close, and she gestured to the tree and said, can you get Mr. Sniffles down? It's pretty high up and you're pretty small. I'm still developing. I simply haven't reached my growth spurt yet, I'm not short. That's cute. His face was scorched. That's what I actually stated. God, I'm so sorry I said that aloud. She was grinning in his direction. She was also near him. I can help. My quirk. It can help. It can. Her widening eyes asked. What can it do? Is it telekinesis? O=O, you're going to grow vines from your hair. Oh, no, that's not right. There's no simple way to explain it. I can do this. He flipped up the tree in 2 steps. He twisted, gently latching his fingers on the cat's stomach as the world blurred into a rush of air. The cat purred. Its talons gnawed at the tree. With the cat firmly nestled in his arms, held close to his chest, he whirled around and tumbled. But the small cartwheel, he landed and planted his feet, letting go of the momentum. That was tiny in Mr. Sniffles' arms now. A feline. A charming one. He found it impossible to help but rub the cat's stomach. Gentle purrs came out of Mr. Sniffles. The feline sprawled into his embrace, as to a young child attempting to slumber. How he had the girl's full attention. Her eyes widened. Her smile grew even larger. Unconsciously, he felt himself retreating a step. You got Mr. Sniffles down, that was amazing. Oh, no it wasn't you jumped up that huge tree without even having a running start. And that flip don't tell me, your quirk it lets you do Parker moves kind of. That's so cool. He was grinning, but it was an uncomfortable smile. He hoped his awkward smile went unnoticed by her. Can you take Mr. Sniffles? Oh. Right. The bundle with dark fur fell out of his hands. He saw how she took care of it. His gaze followed her hands, where she was holding the cat. He wanted to clear his throat and say something almost immediately. It's not my place, that is to say, I shouldn't do it. What if she believes awakened, Mr. Sniffles jerked. The girl's hands were swung by the kitten's claws. Before her hand even left it, he was in motion. His hands shot out, snagging the kitten in midair. She exclaimed, ouch. Damn it Mr. Sniffles. Why you shouldn't be holding him like that. Glaring at him, she held her hand that was scratched. What do you mean? You're holding him by his neck. It probably hurts. He held out his hands. Why you should hold him more gently. Like a baby. Hey what's your deal kid? You think just because you got Mr. Sniffles down from a tree, you think you're better than me at treating him? No, I simply wanted to assist. The girl laughed after snickering. Relax. I'm joking. Oh. He exclaimed. A jest. She's fooling around. You're capable of humor. So, Kid Parker, you said I should hold Mr. Sniffles like this. The procedure involved considerable trial and error. Enough that she could comfortably hold the cat in her hands. Sufficient enough that Mr. Sniffles did not object to her treatment. A respectable approach. However, she might be holding him tighter. She could easily support Mr. Sniffles' weight by using her biceps and brachialis to support it, which would also relieve some of the tension in his spine. Sure, she could spread her fingers and hug him closer to her chest, but that wouldn't work because her chest is However, if she preferred not to hold him, she could safely drape him over her shoulder, keeping him from slipping by wearing her bag like a makeshift cat belt and positioning him so that he moves in 3 dimensions without needless jostling. Well, thanks for the help Kid Parker. Unthinking, he said, Izuku. Midoriya Izuku. She answered, Tsuchikawa. In return. Tsuchikawa Miko. Tsuchikawa Midoriya furrowed his brow. That isn't oh no, that would be a leap. It doesn't signify anything that she has a cat and shares the same last name. However, what would happen if it did? No, it still has no significance. I can't just go up to her and ask her for an autograph, even if we are related. Would it be creepy? Say it annoys her. I'm not sure whether I would enjoy being harassed by everyone simply because I have a relative who is a pro-hero, but what if she is just a person with the same name? That can't be worse. Should she? A finger swung towards him. His physique shifted as well. Before his intellect could catch up, his hand was raised, gripping something. Whoa, Emiko exclaimed. Good reflexes. He had her hand in his. I'm holding a girl's hand, oh my goodness. He released her as though the blow had scorched him. Sorry, you're in your head a lot, aren't you? He made an attempt to smile. I am grinning clumsily. Why am I grinning so unnaturally, I guess? She turned back and remarked, I guess I'll be seeing you around, Midoriya-chan. Thanks for helping me with Mr. Sniffles. Bye. With a single wave, she vanished. Izuku gently said, bye, as he raised his right hand. He hoped he could pull that off. Followed Tsuchikawa's lead. Simply end a discussion without appearing uncomfortable, asking if the other person has finished speaking, or caring if they thought you were only trying to get away. Had she been attempting to avoid his company? Was it too silent from him? Was that unsettling? He was aware that it was unsettling to others. He was not going to be eerie. He hoped he didn't see Miri. He hoped his excessive silence hadn't soured the exchange. He was also itching to talk. Additionally, speak up. Perhaps even give her a compliment. She had good looks. He would have liked to tell her how beautiful he found her. Stated he thought her school outfit looked cute on her. Whoa, school uniform. Midoriya took a quick look at his own attire. Aldera Junior High's uniform was neat and tidy. Iron so thin that one may mistake the creases for blades. With a glare from the digital clock, he raised his left hand. No. As soon as Midoriya Izuku's intellect processed the data displayed on his watch, he started to move his feet. I'm late. He was racing through the streets, which were a blur. He moved as though he was on an obstacle course headed for disaster, ducking and dodging past people and obstacles. His thoughts trailed after his body in motion. Need a shortcut, please. In an alley, his feet skidded to a stop. He took off from a skip, whirled about in midair, and sprinted up the side of a wall before flipping off and landing on rooftops. Quicker. Running over barriers on the rooftop was not as difficult as he had thought. The most difficult part was jumping from one rooftop to another while squeezing under a clothesline and swerving around sporadic heaters and random vents. Right now. Effective timing was used to bridge the gaps in between. He had to roll in order to lose momentum after landing, but he exploited each roll to gain momentum rather than lose it, moving ahead ever faster. It wasn't until he developed his own peculiarity that he realized this. The little ways in which being unique made life wonderful. The minor details that added up to a greater experience. His face being buffeted by the wind. His system was pounding with adrenaline. The thrills and exhilaration as he sprinted on walls, jumped from buildings, flipped, cartwheeled, spun, and tumbled, and avoided hurdle after obstacle. A quirk wasn't some mysterious, strange alien aspect of a person that was only supposed to be employed under special circumstances. It was who he was. He was the one. It felt like an extension of himself that he never really used. He had been missing an arm. A realm he'd been barred from experiencing. Having a quirk transformed his life in every way imaginable, and not having a quirk was like being paralyzed. There. He had the school in his sights. He leaped from the closest building onto the street, dodging people as he went, earning a few startled yells for his abrupt arrival. He timed himself, found the quickest path, and made a simultaneous run for it with every breath. He sprinted past the gates, through the main doors, and through the gates once more. Pushing behind his exertion, he sprinted, only stopping when he saw the familiar doorway. Tired, he took a few deep breaths before answering the door. Midoriya-kun, you're late. From behind him heard the voice of his teacher. Stern. Concentrated. Midoriya thought the pressure would cause his heart to explode. I didn't mean to. But there was this girl, and Mr. Sniffles her cat kitten. There was a tree, and you were helping a girl get her cat out of a tree. His teacher's tone was full of laughter. He doesn't think I'm real. Why yes, I no need to explain at all, Midoriya-kun. I understand you must be itching to use your recently discovered quirk to do some heroics. I well know, it's not like his teacher waved his hand and murmured, shhh. There's nothing to explain at all. These things happen. And I can turn a blind eye to one of the school's finest young students. After all, you and Bakugo-kun are the ones planning on applying to UA, aren't you? Yes, there's no reason to mar your perfect attendance records. He was ignored by the teacher. No, he's just letting me off, not that he's not listening. Now, come on, let's enter. Class should have started already. Izuku pushed open the door and walked into the classroom, forcing his typical smile to appear on his face. He was immediately met with waving, shouts, and amiable grins. "Hey Izuku. There you are. Izuku, buddy, we were wondering what kept you. Izuku-kun, I've kept a seat right beside me. It's warm." The teacher said, "Okay, quiet down. Class is in session. Izuku, go on and take your seat." He experienced numbness. Despite moving to the rear of the class, he remained numb. Nobody tried to trip him by sticking out their legs. As he went by, nobody laughed or said anything like quirkless or useless. His eyes were predatory and unsettling, like that girl who used to gaze at him like an insect. The two boys were treating him like a king, the ones that used to put spitballs in his ear. Silently, he sat down and felt his heart race in his chest. It seemed like it was about to burst from the amount of pounding. Beat so hard he thought people may actually hear it. A voice spoke out from beside him, "Oi. You're fucking late, Deku. What took you?" Kitsuki Bakugo, the blonde with the permanent frown, was the only one who seemed normal. "I don't understand." Bakugo gave a snort. "You make it sound like that's supposed to be something new." He nibbled his lip. "Everyone is acting different." Bakugo sneered, "You mean how everyone is suddenly kissing your ass?" They were not incorrect, they just weren't the terms he would use. He gently nodded his head. "Congratulations," Kakin exclaimed while waving his index finger. "Now that everyone knows you've got a quirk and it's one that fucking blows theirs out of the water, you've graduated from mob trash to side character." "What's that supposed to mean?" Kakin pointed to two lads and said, "It means you're fucking better than them, and they know it." Deku was familiar with them. They were friends of Bakugo's. The people who always went with him. "They'll stick beside you like white on fucking rice, because the morons believe that if they stand in front of a light bulb long enough, they'll start to glow." Was that accurate? Now that he'd finally revealed his oddity, people would want to be friends with him. Would they grant him preferential treatment just because his eccentricity was admirable? Would they ignore his little mistakes due to a natural ability he possessed? An ability over which he himself had no control. That's wrong." Bakugo asked, "What, are you fucking complaining? Like you're any fucking different?" It burned in his chest. "I'm not like that." "Then why the fuck are you even talking to me?" What? "I'm not an idiot, Deku. You were trash without a quirk. I let you know this every day. In your fucking face, every day. Yet you'd follow me with this stupid look on your face no matter what. That stupid look, you never stopped having it for one fucking day." Bakugo sighed. "At least, with the hangers on, I knew they were getting something out of hanging out around me cause they made it obvious. With you, it's like you felt chasing after my fucking shadow could make you more than trash. How does that make you any fucking different from them?" He desired to refute it. He wanted to express his friendship for Kakin. That before Kakin developed his peculiarity, they had been pals. He was unable to. There was one item about which Kakin was correct, thus he couldn't. He had been following Bakugo. Desperately, he had been chasing after him. He held him in high regard. He was impressed by his self-assurance. His proficiency. His unwavering arrogance and certain methods of operation. His capacity to express himself without regard for the ideas or opinions of others and to speak whatever was on his mind. Then, was it a friendship if one person only ever showed admiration and respect for the other? If one person only elevated the other and made them the object of desire? Could it even be considered a friendship if all he did was look up to Kakin and receive his inspiration and confidence from her without ever offering anything back? Friendships were meant to be equal, mutual, and give and take. Did they ever truly become friends? Have I ever shown Kakin any kindness as a friend? Something was biting into his abdomen. Glowered at him. Well, they were pals, right? At minimum, he ought to have assisted Kakin once. Something that without him Kakin would not have been able to do. Perhaps a gift or some kind of help that he offered. Alternatively, or Kakin is too proud to take assistance. Or guidance. It also won't allow him to request it. He wouldn't do it unless he thought of me as an equal. However, he won't because I've been after him for a considerable amount of time. It will be even more hurtful to his dignity if I win a fight with him. Things will turn bad if I keep it to myself since he'll find out. Thus, how? Kakin. What is it, Deku? Can you after school? No, don't inquire. He gave it another go. I want you to show me some stuff you think we can do with our quirks. No. Izuku lost confidence. Oh. Just don't accept no. How would Kakin respond to this? I'm not taking no for an answer. Tiny spark shot from Bakugo's hand as his expression brightened. What was that bastard? Be not afraid. You have nothing to fear from Kakin, so don't be you. Izuku pushed out, you heard me. We were going to do stuff. Have fun. Like friends. Good friends. I said I'm not interested, Deku. I didn't stutter, I said I won't take no for an answer. The first time, I didn't stutter. Do you have a death wish? And no, he stammered, damn it. You have a death wish. That doesn't even make any fucking sense. You don't make any fucking sense. I swear, I swear, I swear. He felt ashamed of himself for using the F-word in such a casual manner. He got a kick out of using the F-word in such a casual manner. He studied the momentarily astonished expression on Kakin's face, read his body language, his facial expressions, remembered his rich vocabulary, his minor quirks. He then channeled everything into his eccentricity. He added, "You heard me," as his tone wavered until it matched Kitsuki Bakugo phoneme for phoneme in terms of both deepness and octave. "We're going to fucking have a blast with our quirks and you're going to come along, sit down, and have fun, or my name isn't Izuku fucking Midoriya." He was a little louder than he had meant to be, but it was too little, too late. The whole classroom was staring at them, staring in his direction. A piece of chalk fell from the teacher's palm, mouths were open, eyes were wide, and jaws were slack. In a scenario like embarrassing, Midoriya Izuku would have cowered down and hoped some random blanket would materialize to cover his embarrassment. But it wasn't Midoriya Izuku who was there at that precise moment. Instead, it was Midoriya Izuku imitating Kitsuki Bakugo with his peculiarity. Naturally, in such a circumstance, Kitsuki Bakugo could only ever think of one reaction. "What the fuck are you all looking at? Do we look like we invited you to sit down, drink tea and listen in on our private fucking conversation? Huh?" The students' gazes instinctively shifted forward like clockwork. There were just the two of them left watching. Both Kitsuki Bakugo and the instructor. Midoriya-kun, what?" The instructor cleared his throat. That is an interesting use of your quirk. But do keep it down, just a bit. TCH. Whatever. The instructor went back to his board, the pupils engaged in small talk, and just when they thought the day could possibly get any more absurd, a sound that no one had ever heard before or ever thought they would hear came from the back row. The sound of Kitsuki Bakugo laughing was what it was. Do her next." Izuku Midoriya cleared his throat. The smooth feminine voice came out of his mouth with grace and fluidity. "I do surely believe, as an Aojo-sama of this distinguished family, that requesting me to perform such paltry tricks for your amusement is beneath someone of my station." The reaction of onlookers to the feminine voice made Kakin smile ferociously, but he was unable to determine the source of the sound or the identity of the speaker. "Try All Might." Izuku smiled. "Have no fear, citizens. For I am here. No evildoer shall escape the mighty power of justice. All Might. I heard All Might's voice just now. All Might is here." Kakin attempted not to bark with laughter, holding his sides and covering his mouth with one hand. It was impossible for Izuku not to feel a little sorry for the people who were now frantically scanning the area with their phones in hand in an attempt to locate the symbol of peace himself. They were whispering, muttering, and making up stories about how All Might could have become invisible or projected his presence from a distance. Regaining control over his laughing, Kakin responded, "Fine, I'll admit it. Your quirk isn't anywhere near as strong as mine, but it's fucking damn more entertaining." "That's some really high praise coming from you, Kakin. Don't let it go to your head. I'll be sure to cherish the moment you praise my quirk forever, Kitsuki-kun." Kakin twitched his left eye. "Alright. You sound more irritating than your usual fucking self. Who the fuck are you mimicking now?" Izuku was unable to resist. "The only person I'd ever want to mimic is you, Kitsuki-kun. That's fucking creepy." Izuku scratched the back of his head, saying, "But Kitsuki-kun, I thought you liked it when people wore your ski. Ouch." Fine, I'll stop mimicking Hebamaru-sensei." Kakin gasped, "That's who you were mimicking? No fucking wonder it sounded so gross. You know he's a slimy fucking bastard, right? Just because his quirk makes him part snake doesn't mean he's slimy. The fact that he's always loitering around the girls' bathroom makes him fucking slimy." Izuku winced. I didn't know that." Kakin gave a snort. "Of course you didn't. You barely notice anything that happens around the school." Izuku said, "I was always dealing with my own problems. Not having a quirk. Not having any friends. Kachan stress eating. My own thoughts of how much I just wanted to give up. And you, Kakin, you didn't make it any easier with your words." And Izuku nibbled on his lip. "They hurt. The words more than the shoves or explosions in my face. Your words hurt, Kakin. Why the fuck do you care so much about anything I say?" Izuku murmured, clumsily massaging his hand, "Because you're my friend, Kakin. Or at least the closest thing I have to a friend. Even though you berated me and insulted me and belittled my dream. We were friends before you got your quirk and left me in the dust. And I didn't want to lose that. I'd already lost my dream, lost my joy, lost my mom's peace of mind. And if I lost my only friend as well, it'd be like I lost everything. Everything. Just because I wasn't born with a quirk. I don't think I could have come back from that." Something about Kakin felt strange. Izuku was unsure of his identity. However, his hands were clenched. He had an angry expression on his face. Harder than he had ever imagined. "Ah, sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. What the fuck is wrong with you?" Izuku recoiled at the sheer rage in his voice. I don't understand." Kakin remained silent for a moment. The boy rushed off in any direction he felt like going. Izuku desired to go with him. He was curious as to what he had said or done incorrectly. He wasn't attempting any kind of guilt trip with Kakin. "All I want is for us to reunite as friends." All he wanted was a friend once more. All he wanted was a friend. Kitsuki Bakugo was in need of an outlet. He required something robust to support the full force of his explosions. The crushing ache in his chest was something he had to fuck out or else he thought it could explode. Deku is fucked. Despite what many would have you believe, Kitsuki Bakugo was not without empathy. Contrary to popular belief, he was not frigid, empty, or heartless. Anger was the feeling he knew the most, yet he understood emotions more than most. Fury and anger. He felt both of those feelings at the moment. The object of that hatred and anger was one fucking obnoxious piece of trash, and he could feel them eating him up inside. A shitbag called Kitsuki Bakugo. Screw it. He ground his teeth together and kicked an aluminium beer can that stood in his way. It infuriated him. It annoyed him to listen to Deku. Hearing someone he treated like garbage, possibly even worse than garbage, tell him they were pals. He intended to accuse Deku of being insane. Pitiful and deluded. However, he was the truly pitiful one. He was the one who wanted to be the hero, the one who could not even recognize when someone needed to be saved. Not even able to recognize the harm that his acts and words were doing. Too oblivious to his own petty ego and foolish disposition. When he talked, did Deku even realize how he looked? He wasn't sure the boy did. He didn't think he could see how he seemed. He looked really exhausted. How hollow he appeared. Broken. Shattered. Worn down. Desperate. Bakugo was furious. He was furious with himself. He felt enraged for Midoriya. He was furious since he knew that the damn Deku would not be upset with him. It was clear to him that Deku would not even bother to ask for an apology, would not care if he never did, and would just carry on as if Bakugo's own words and deeds had not been the last straw that broke the camel's back. He detested Midoriya's lack of anger towards him. That's what he would have accepted. Handling it would have been simpler. To deal with animosity. To control anger and contempt. To absorb all his animosity. The fact that Midoriya wasn't angry at him was worse. Did not ask for anything from him. Made things difficult for him. Didn't give him a way or a way out. Deku only asked to be his friend, even after all of this. He was forgiven by Deku. And Bakugo could not forgive himself for that. It tore at him. Ate in his face. Deep within him was burned. A feeling of sheer disgust for himself. For himself, out of disgust. A queasy feeling that overcame him each time he imagined Deku's face, Deku's hollow, empty face, while the youngster described his troubles and how Bakugo, the only person in the world he considered a friend, made them worse. After a mere 3 seconds, Bakugo staggered into an alley and shoved his stomach's contents into the closest garbage can. Fuck it. Kitsuki Bakugo refused to be a worthless piece of work. That kind of trash was not what he wanted to be. That kind of pitiful. Not even villains and bastards attempted to make their filthy henchmen's lives more difficult. But without companions. Alone, a person who aspired to be a hero. You're going to be some fucking hero, I promise. Somehow, he'd put things right. He understood that he had to find a way to put things right. All he wanted to do was figure out how. "Here, kitty, I've brought some snacks for you." The Musatafu stray cats were suspicious of outsiders. Most humans were avoided by them, and they avoided those with particularly frightening mutant oddities. The fact that the cat seemed to appreciate him pleased Izuku. Animals seems to enjoy him. They were pleasant. He was also an animal lover. Even so, he wasn't sure if he should maintain a pet. In some respects, it felt wrong. He was aware that while there were many pet owners who behaved cruelly towards their animals, there were also many who gave their animals the greatest care possible. That kind of pet owner was not his cup of tea. "Is it okay if I give you a name?" The concerned black tabby didn't appear to mind. It rubbed its face against Izuku's extended hand and purred. It brought to mind the girl he had met earlier in the day. Of Mr. Sniffles, her cat, who had been stuck on a tree. Aiding those in need made me feel good. Any time he could do something to even slightly brighten someone else's day, it lifted his self-esteem. He aspired to accomplish that, to gradually brighten people's days. He aspired to be the kind of person he had hoped to meet. "How's Kuro?" With its tail waving back and forth, the cat purred. "You don't like it? I guess it's kind of too common a name, Shinigami." It was a voice from behind him. He was not alarmed. Long before they arrived, he heard the footsteps. They weren't, however, his typical footsteps. They didn't appear to be as confident in them as they were. It didn't sound like someone he knew. Wasn't what he had remembered at all. "I don't think that's a good name for a cat, Kakin." There was silence for a minute. Izuku gave the cat a look. "What do you think? Would you like to be called Shinigami?" You could add a title to it. Make it formal. Kickus. Like Sir. Sir Shinigami. It'll let it know the other cats know not to fuck with him. Izuku's lips were twitching uncontrollably. How about Sir Kuro the Shinigami? It's a hell of a mouthful for a damn cat. Sir Kuro the Shinigami it is. We can call him Shin, or Gami, or Kuro or just Sir. What do you think, sir? There's no fucking way I'm calling a cat sir. Izuku lifted the recently created Sir Kuro and raised him into the air. He stood up and twirled, beckoning the feline ahead. Think fast. Boy Deku Yukakin's reflexes were good. Sufficient to capture Sir Kuro. Just enough to keep the cat at a safe distance. Kuro purred while extending his body and massaging Kakin's palms with his whiskers. He gave the cat a menacing gaze as the blonde's eye twitched. Kuro brushed it off and proceeded to licking his fur. I think he likes you. He's fucking ignoring me. That's how you know he likes you. Kakin gave a snort. Izuku flung back his head and dusted his palms. I'm tired. I'm going to head home before Kasan starts to get worried. Hello, Kakin halted. Izuku. Wait. The last time he'd heard Kakin address him by name, he couldn't recall. His real name. Not his name, not Deku, not garbage, not mob, not loser, not geek. He couldn't recall the previous instance. When Kakin last stood, his expression was a rainbow of emotions, his eyes were turned to one side, and he had a serious, defeated stance. Kakin started to say, "I," but then stopped. Izuku heard teeth grinding together. The arid lip licking. The process of salivation. He could see the beads of perspiration. Breathing difficulty. A sluggish, shaky handshake. Izuku said, "Hey Kakin. Do you want to come over to my place and play video games?" His shoulders became less tense. Izuku was aware. Izuku was able to tell. He was aware of it since he had experienced what it was like to have something inside of him gnawing away. He wasn't sure what was consuming Kakin, but he was aware that sometimes the greatest way to eliminate a feeling was to just have someone there. Video games. Kakin said once more. With an uneasy smile, he said, I started playing, recently. Kasan bought me a console and several new games after I unlocked my quirk. I think she's trying to spoil me, you know, to make up for, he said. We can play Heroes Smash V. That's the new one, isn't it? With all might. Kuro was removed from his friend's grasp by Izuku. He took a last treat from behind his back, dropped it in front of the cat, and gave the animal a nice massage in its ears. Izuku urged Kakin to hurry up. For once, he continued walking without turning around. Even when the talk ended, he didn't feel pain. Maybe he didn't inquire as to whether the youngster had any other ideas. Although Izuku Midoriya recognized and realized that not everything was meant to be, he still desired a companion. He continued to walk, disregarding the small knot in his stomach that formed when he heard no footsteps following him. When no footsteps were heard, he ignored the churning bitterness in his mouth and continued walking. Pushing down the lump in his throat at the silence, he walked. He then started to walk. Oi. Izuku. Wait up, damn it. And something quite else sprang from his chest. Footsteps resounded behind him, and for the first time in what seemed like an eternity Izuku Midoriya was content. You fucking can't. Once more, he and Kakin argued. It irked Izuku when they got into arguments. When Kakin said some of the things he said, he became even less fond of it. When Kakin's outlook on the world was gloomy. When he reduced all individuals to the strong and the weak. Both the user and the utilized. When he gave the impression that everyone was awful. I can. Izuku be fucking real. All Might does it. All Might never loses, growled Kakin. He never fucking loses. But that doesn't mean he fucking saves everybody. Check the fucking listings. Endeavor has solved more bloody incidents than All Might, and even then, Endeavor has never, ever saved everyone. Then I'll be the type of hero that saves everyone. Stop saying such cheesy bullshit like this is one of those stupid comic books and manga. Kakin yelled. You're just going to fucking kill yourself if you try to save everyone. You're going to fuck yourself over if you try to please everyone. That's your problem, Izuku, you're a fucking people pleaser. You want a world where everyone is your fucking friend and you can hold hands and sing Kumbaya, but that shit doesn't happen. It can't happen. You'll make enemies just by breathing. Make enemies just by taking the last slice of pie on a tray that someone else wanted. The problem is, you'll be too fucking dense to even realize they're your enemies, and when you do it'll be too late. That was not how Midoriya saw it. After there was good, there was evil. There were humans, imperfect people, but imperfect people required assistance, support, and second chances. Then there were some who could not get assistance. Those who wounded others by using their shortcomings and problems as a justification. As a defense for disparaging the helpless. Those were not the kind of folks he liked. He found it even more annoying that Kakin occasionally hung out with those kinds of people. The whole disagreement had begun with a Heroes Smash V game. First, there was the pre-game talk and jokes. Next, Kakin repeatedly cursed after losing the game. He continued by talking about the kind of hero he aspired to be. After then, Kakin spoke about the kind of hero he aspired to be. On this matter, they could not agree. Kakin aspired to be the most formidable hero. The kind of hero who never dropped a fight. The ones from whom villains would run screaming, for his very presence inspired a sense of dread and impending disaster. A hero who sent evil reeling, his tail between his legs, just by being. Izuku aspired to be the most compassionate hero. The one who made a special effort to promote justice and inspire hope. The hero of the common guy. A personification of good who would battle evil, but who would always find time to save the cat from a tree or the elderly woman across the street. The kind of hero the people idolized and admired, one who would always come through for those in need of salvation. Kakin accepted the argument. He stated that not everyone in need of rescue could be saved. Izuku raised a protest. He thought it was. Then the dispute got really heated. I'll prove you wrong. And how the fuck are you going to do that? Izuku nibbled on his lip. At school. I'll help everybody that needs help. I'll tell them I am here. So they know that they can always have someone to count on in their time of need. If I can help everyone without issue, then you'll believe me when I say I can save everyone too. Kakin snorted. You'll fucking regret it, Izuku. I won't. I love helping people. Izuku, you're basically saying you're going to let yourself be a fucking doormat. It's like a lion choosing to cut off his claws, shave his mane and fucking expose his neck to a pack of hyenas. They'll slaughter you. Izuku scowled. People aren't as bad as you think they are, Kakin. You're right, Kakin concurred. They're fucking worse. Kakin was turning into a more gloomy person than Izuku had remembered. He was unsure about the cause of it. Why his friend was always the first to point out the shortcomings. Although he had always been abrasive and irascible, he had never had such little faith in other people. Izuku already found it difficult to comprehend that his goal as a hero was to stop villains rather than save people. Izuku said, you'll see, Kakin. I'll show you what kind of hero I'm going to be. A specific remark when Izuku announced something to his pupils that morning, Aldera Junior High was a flurry of activity. Elevated atop a table, he suppressed his own quick heartbeat and self-doubt by channeling his inner Katsuki and making his pronouncement. If there's anyone who needs help with anything at all, why you can ask me, and I'll try my best to help you out. One student with lizard eyes squinted. What's the catch? There's no catch. I just want to help out as many people as I can. Another student questioned, with your quirk? Izuku gave his head a little rub. Well, if it's something that my quirk can help with, then yes. The classroom was filled with whispers and murmurs that moved as quickly as light. Everyone seemed to have a sudden burst of excitement and Izuku could feel his chest pound even harder. What specifically made them so happy? He looked over to the back row and saw Kakin sneering and trying his best to look as if he had no interest in the whole thing. Kakin, just wait, I'll show you. It pleased Midoriya Izuku to assist others. He found satisfaction in assisting others with their issues. Not that he truly wanted thanks. He didn't require appreciation. All he wanted was to support others. Since no one was there for him, he wanted to be there for other people. And he was aware of how awful that felt. He detested how awful it felt. When nobody was rooting for you. Nobody to instruct you to put up your chin and smile. Nobody to encourage you to never give up and to have faith in your aspirations. When nobody thought you could achieve your dreams, not even your mother. Class went on as usual during the first few hours and nobody asked him for anything. That is, until the teacher asked a student to assist in cleaning the chalkboard halfway through the third session. The pupil moaned and then abruptly jerked his head back. Hey, Izuku-kun, do you mind helping me with the blackboard? All eyes in the class were focused on him. Okay, the instructor arched an eyebrow but remained silent. Whispers, laughs, and chortles were heard. Izuku rose to his feet, reached for the duster, and with 3 deft fluid motions, the board was completely cleaned. It took all of 2 seconds, barely. Quietly, the teacher whistled. My, Midoriya-san. That's impressive. Your quirk. Why yeah. Go on, back to your seat. After wiping his hands, he sat down next to Kakin, who was making a concerted effort not to look at him. Oi Izuku. Better call it quits now. What are you talking about? You don't know these bastards like I do. You never got to know them because you were always dealing with your own shit. But if you don't call it quits now, it's going to get fucking worse. You're paranoid, Kakin. Kakin snorted. Don't say I didn't fucking warn you. Midoriya-san, hey, my right hand is feeling kind of sore, can you help me copy the notes? A girl with a pug face responded. Ah well, I can help, thanks. She threw her book to him, sat back in her chair, and began tapping her phone discreetly beneath her desk. Hey, Izuku, my hand's kind of sore too. Yeah, me too. Me as well, must be the weather. One by one, the books stacked up. One by one, to the point where Izuku's table was piled high with a dozen notebooks and half the class was laughing. "It's okay." He inhaled deeply. He took a deep, slow breath and used both hands to perform the task. Everyone turned to stare and the snickering suddenly ceased. His hands, left and right, were fuzzily visible. Hazy due to motion. Midoriya Izuku's two hands moved in unison, faster than the human eye could follow. Pages upon pages of expressive fluid kanji text appeared. He was printing more than he was writing because it was easy to confuse his handwriting for one that had been created by a computer. As he wrote each book, they slipped one after the other, swirling and juggling in the air, giving him no margin for error. Just as the man wrote, he duplicated the teacher's remarks onto the board. Compassing 12 notes at once was a manageable task for someone whose mission in life was to help everyone. No way he's like a computer. A bell rung. At the very moment when Midoriya Izuku finished writing the last character and shut the books, the teacher dropped his chalk. The books shot into the air like shuriken and raced to their rightful owners with a simple flick of his wrists. "And that's all we have time for right now, and why are you all staring at Midoriya? I was helping them out, sensei. A lot of people's wrists seem to be sore for some reason, so I helped them out with the notes." The instructor cleared his throat. "Is that so? Well then, carry on." As soon as the teacher left, the students sent out a round of enthusiastic cheers and murmurs. "Yo. Izuku, that was fucking cool. Your quirk is awesome. Midoriya. The boys are going to shoot some hoops. We'd love for you to join us. You don't have anything doing right. Come on." Sure. Why not?" Kakin continued to lurk. Izuku signaled him to calm down. He knew he was capable. But he was able to aid others. And the way they were all joyful and excited about him, with their eyes lighting up as they looked at him. "What's the holdup?" "I'm coming." Since the lunch break wasn't very long, he knew he would immediately return to aiding others after assisting the lads with their basketball shooting. The swings and main playground weren't too far from the basketball court. It was his first time ever played hoops, in a way. He did not know the regulations. To be honest, he had no idea how to play. Nevertheless, he knew exactly what to do as soon as the ball was thrown in his direction. He gave a once, twice, and then lifted his arm in a three-pointer. "Damn. Izuku, were you using your quirk?" Izuku fixed his gaze on his hands. I wasn't." "Huh. Make him go a bit farther, let's see how he fares." "And no using your quirk." He could hardly see the net because of the distance. Nevertheless, his body responded instinctively the moment the ball touched his hands. Bounce, 1, 2, and holy shit. He made the shot. How the hell did he make that? "You cheated. You used your quirk, didn't you?" "No, I didn't." "There's no way you would have made that shot without your quirk." "But whatever. Come on, let's just have some fun." Fun wasn't really to be had. You couldn't dribble him. It didn't matter what plan they used or how they tried to trick him, nothing worked. His eyes were able to see right through it. His body moved automatically. His reflexes sprung into action on their own and stopped anyone from moving past him. When he was the one dribbling, it got even worse. He bounced the ball faster than most people could keep up with. He was able to abruptly halt moving and spin around. He had the ability to slink through the smallest gaps unnoticed. He could not be touched if he did not want to be touched. His instincts would set in automatically, keeping anyone from approaching him. Keeping everyone from approaching the ball and touching it. "Hey, Izuku, I think maybe you should go." "Go? Yeah. It's no fun with you. You're too broken, man. Like a cheat character. 7 us ganged up and we couldn't even touch you." "Oh. Maybe we could play something else." One of the youngsters scoffed. "Like what? Every sport requires reflexes and timing and stuff. It'll just be a repeat of this." "Yeah. Sorry, Izuku, but we don't think you should participate in sports anymore. It wouldn't be fair to any side to have you on a team." "Oh," he uttered softly. Okay, but if you need my help with anything else, I'll be here." Yeah, whatever." His ears did not follow him as he left the court. They were sharper than most people. Perceptive enough to hear their hushed chatter before he departed. "Ugh, Midoriya's a freak. I can't believe I preferred him when he was quirkless. Now he's got a quirk and he's fucking looking down on all of us. Getting payback for all the stuff we did to him. Is that what he's doing?" It's not, come on. I mean, standing up in front of the class and saying he'll help out anyone who asks for his help. He's doing it to make us all look incompetent. Compared to him we kind of are. It's not our fault he's got a freakish quirk. How's anyone supposed to compare to that?" He wanted to march back, show them how wrong they were. But he had no intention of overshadowing them. To give them a negative appearance. He was unable to. He was unable to do so without disclosing that his peculiarity enhanced his hearing. Not without making a terrible impression of himself. "Hey Midoriya. There you are." Izuku jerked up his head. One of his students came up to him and excitedly waved his hand. Izuku recalled his name, Mitsuda. And looking all over for you, dude. I need your help. Izuku felt something grow in his chest and said, sure. I'll help. What do you need? Do you mind using your quirk to help me draw a portrait? Izuku gave a blink. Even though it wasn't exactly what he had planned or anticipated, it was nonetheless a request for assistance. I haven't tried drawing with my quirk yet, but I'll see what I can do. Great. It has to be a portrait of Akari-chan. Akari, she could have been considered one of the class's most attractive girls. The prettiest female in the class, actually. Despite her reputation for being chilly, too. Does he desire an image of Akari or I think I can do that. The boy said, great. He leaned forward and whispered the specifics of the image into his ear, saying, also, I need you to. Izuku's eyes widened with each syllable, his cheeks heated up, and he hardly gave the boy a chance to finish before pushing him away. I can't, that's the boy gave him a back pat and exclaimed, of course you can. Your quirk lets you do anything you want with absolute precision, doesn't it? This'll be nothing for you. I mean, I shouldn't. It's wrong. She won't like that. It's wrong. Come on, Midoriya-kun. It's just art. Art. Besides, didn't you say you'd help anyone who needed it? Why can't you help me with this? It's wrong. I can't do that. So, you're saying you can't help me? Is that it? After standing up in front of the whole class and telling everyone you'd help them in the end, you were just all talk? No. Izuku snapped. Means to say, could he? Why do you even want something like that? He was staring at Mitsuda. Are you gay or something? What? I mean, you and Bakugo are kinda close. I didn't want to assume not that there's anything wrong with it. Midoriya gave a stutter. I'm not. We're not, we're just friends. Then were you asking what I want to do with the portrait? Obviously, I'm going to add it to my spank bank. Why, you're what? Mitsuda widened his eyes. Are you sure you're not gay? Wait, no, even gay people know what a spank bank is. You're not asexual or something, are you? Asexual. It means you don't get hard when watching porn. A fresh wave of heat rushed into Midoriya's face. I don't, you don't. He said, watch PP porn. I don't watch stulshit, sneered Mitsuda. I'm serious. After a few sharp moments of stillness, Mitsuda's eyes grew wide with realization. Holy shit. You're not pulling my leg. Midoriya gave a nod. Mitsuda mumbled under his breath, huh. I thought guys like you were only an urban legend or a myth that self-righteous people spread to make the rest of us feel bad. So how do you get off? Don't tell me you use your imagination or something. That'd be one hell of an imagination. Get off. You know? Mitsuda asked, moving his right hand in a few forward and backward motions. With confused blinks, Midoriya looked, asking, jack it off. Beat the chicken. Holy fucking shit, you can't tell me you've never heard of masturbation. Are you from the Sengoku era or something? How did we arrive at this stage in the conversation? Coughing into his hand, Midoriya made every effort to avoid making eye contact. I don't do that. Mitsuda massaged his jaw, so. What, you just go around ignoring the urges? Or, is it that puberty hasn't kicked in yet for you? I think we've gone off track. Mitsuda gave a hand wave. No, we're on the right track. I wanna know how it's like for other people or maybe if it's just me. What? Mitsuda said, my quirk. Midoriya appeared even more perplexed. You don't remember what my quirk is? We all had that class where we showed our. Oh, that's right. You were quirkless back then. You probably didn't show up. Mitsuda let out a deep bear-like roar as she growled. In a matter of seconds, the boy's definition of muscle increased. It expanded and grew until his shirt was almost too tiny, almost ripped, and his whole physique looked like something out of a bodybuilder's catalog. His arms and face, however, were the most obviously different. His beard was thick and bushy, covering most of his face. He also had a lot of hair on his arms. Mitsuda's voice was much more baritone and deeper than before. My quirk is called Man Up. It makes my entire body flood with testosterone to develop muscles and tons of hair. It makes me pretty antsy for a fight, energized, a bit short-tempered and horny. The child felt his muscles pop like a balloon. His hair fell back to its original place on his face and the metamorphosis left his uniform rumpled. The thing is, as a side effect, my quirk makes my body secrete at least 5 times more testosterone on average than most guys. I started puberty when I was 6. I had a full beard when I was 11. I constantly have to shave every morning, but the worst part is how hard it gets whenever I so much as get a glimpse of a girl's legs or skirt or thighs or well, any part, really. Oh. Midoriya was at a loss for words. Exactly what to say eluded him. It was the first time he had truly realized he knew someone like that. He'd heard of people's eccentricities having unintended effects or problems that changed their biology and led to problems they themselves had little control over. That's hard. Was that supposed to be a pun? Izuku's gaze expanded. No, I mean calm down, Mitsuda remarked. You're not wrong. I wear 3 pairs of boxer shorts every day and sometimes it's still not enough to hide it. The worst part is during PE classes it's like they're trying to make my life more difficult. Have you tried talking to specialist? Mitsuda grimaced as she nodded. Put me on some treatment for hormone imbalance and whatnot. Tried to counter the testosterone production with estrogen. It didn't end well. Midoriya wanted to ask him if there was more to the narrative but she couldn't find it in him. So, yeah, Mitsuda waved. I watch a ton of porn. I read a lot of doujin and watch hentai too. I'm pretty sure there's no hentai on this planet you can name that I haven't watched. Kinda wish there was a trivia contest for that sort of thing. I'd take home the gold any day. That's so the reason you want a portrait of Akari-san. To be honest, I kind of like her, Mitsuda said. Nah, that's an understatement. I'm head over heels for her. Just her looking at me makes me harder than porno of mutant-type girls hitting it with a guy with a tentacle quirk. I asked her out, you know. She says she's got a boyfriend who's in his 2nd year in senior high. Going to one of the top hero academies to boot. And me? I'm just the guy whose quirk makes him always horny. I can't really compete with that, can I? Mitsuda raised his palms to face him. So I just need a portrait, Midoriya. A picture. Something to have as a consolation. A cathartic object. I don't care if people think it's disgusting or wrong or whatever. They haven't walked in my shoes. They don't know what it's like to constantly feel like I feel. To have to jerk off 5 times a day on average just to think straight. It's not my fault I was born like this, but at least I'm trying my hardest. Midoriya Izuku had a dry throat. This was trickier than he had anticipated. If it had merely been a request from a deviant of some kind, it would have been simpler, but Mitsuda was unique. What action was morally correct? Should he decline and let Mitsuda suffer in quiet or draw porn of his own classmate to assist someone in a strange situation? Izuku was born without a quirk, so if he was to be condemned for something that wasn't totally within his control, wouldn't that make him similar to the others who looked down on him? I'm not actually hurting anyone, and if it's done for a worthwhile purpose, then I will lie if you promise not to tell anyone, not to show anyone, not to mention it to anyone. The youngster became quite happy. You have my word no one will know of Akari-chan's portrait but myself and my right hand. Izuku winced. I swear on it. Mitsuda lifted his hand to his chest. I swear on my mutant girl hentai collection. As they moved to a quiet spot, his heart pounded fiercely in his chest. The delinquents used this location, which was littered with empty beer cans and cigarette stubs. A place Izuku never thought he would have any need to approach. Taking a deep breath, he reached for the black pen and the boy's sketching book. Mitsuda-san, Izuku remembered his name. You're using a pen. To draw. Why yeah. Why not a pencil? So you can erase mistakes. My quirk, it's named Precision. It doesn't make mistakes. Pretty badass claim. Let's see if it's true. Everything about the process began at once. His thoughts was the source of the vision. Based on the things Mitsuda had described to him. To locating and perfecting his own internal representation of Kobayashi Akari. The pen moved when his right hand accidentally dropped it on the paper. His hand immediately received the mental image. Instead of drawing in the traditional manner, he used his hand to move like a typewriter or printer, creating an artificial image that was printed from top to bottom and from right to left. The whole thing was a blur. His hand moved more quickly than his mind could comprehend. The pen's speed and pressure on the paper gave the impression that the thing was gliding. Skating over the ice. His hand stopped at the bottom after a whole 30 seconds and Midoriya Izuku just stared at his creation. Whoa. Fuck. There's a word for this kind of art. Realism. No, what was it? Izuku muttered, gazing at the portrait. Photorealism. An image of a fellow student. An exceptionally well-drawn portrait of a classmate that could not have been confused with a snapshot. He would never have thought that someone had drawn it if Midoriya hadn't done it himself. He might have thought it was a photo with a filter on it. A picture of a naked classmate. A gag sensation in her mouth. Her hand shot forward. A provocative, defiant glance. He sensed something stirring within of him every second he gazed at the photo. When he realized he sketched this, an intense heat wave shot across his face. This is what I sketched. Yo, Midoriya, if the whole hero business doesn't pan out you'd make a bloody fortune as an artist. Ha. Was not the thing on Izuku's mind. It was centered around his work. The illustrations he created. This is what I sketched. How did I create this drawing? Until now, all he had ever seen of female breasts were in biology textbooks. Never thoroughly examined the anatomy or art of humans. How did his peculiarity manage to get every feature, from Akari-sen's 2 piercings to her outward, rather than inner belly button? I don't think I've ever heard of anyone being stunned speechless by their own art before. Mitsuda laughed. Izuku's focus returned to the actual world. His thoughts changed, becoming more fixated on the sexiness than the art. He had never been a porn star. Being quirky kept him too busy to take the time to sit down and concentrate on such things, unlike other kids his age. That's why he'd never masturbated either. He couldn't recall ever having a crush on anyone, either. Was it really possible? Mitsuda-san, is it possible for someone's quirk to affect them, like have a side effect on them, without them realizing it? Mitsuda nodded and said, well, yeah. I know of a girl in another school whose quirk kicked in and turned her completely invisible. Turned out she never realized it and didn't understand why people were running away from the floating dress and shoes. The young man nodded. Stuff like that isn't uncommon. Were you asking? You think your quirk has a side effect you never noticed? Well, my quirk makes my reflexes and hand-eye coordination precise. Like are really precise. I once caught a fly out of the air by its wings without killing it. Another tea time, I dodged a baseball coming at me from behind without even knowing it was coming. Mitsuda gave a shrug. Seems pretty standard. But what if my quirk also affects my insides? Like regulating my blood or stabilizing my heartbeat or affecting the secretion of hormones? Izuku gently nodded. Making everything precise. Mitsuda responded, whoa. That'd be insane. Have you tested it out? Tested? Yeah. I mean, we know you can precisely mimic people's voices and body language like what you did with Bakugo in class, so that means your quirk affects your voice box and affects your brain to be able to make you mimic someone's personality, and that means your quirk does affect your biology, so Mitsuda was humming. Try making your teeth precise. My teeth? I mean, gotta start small. Worst case scenario you make them all fall out. Still better than messing with your stomach or brain or something. Izuku slid his eyes shut. Sharpening my teeth more precisely. How would one go about doing that? How can someone have more accurate teeth? His eyes opened. Mitsuda was looking. I don't think I can. What? Without saying anything, the boy took out his phone and turned on the front camera. Izuku blinked at his sparkling white dentures once more. Brilliant dentures. Furthermore, the teeth were in perfect alignment. His mouth closed, upper and lower, in perfect alignment. Wow. Did you feel anything happen in your mouth? Pain? Discomfort? No, nothing. Mitsuda gave a nod. Well, there's your answer. If your quirk can instantly make your teeth shine and make them perfect without you even noticing a difference, it's not hard to believe that your quirk is doing other things to your body that you have no idea is happening. Izuku wasn't sure he was happy with that insight. That realization really unsettled him. I might be impacted by my quirk without even realizing it. Anyway, Mitsuda snatched up Akari's portrait, rolled it up, and tucked it into his bag. Thanks a bunch for the help, Midoriya. It's nothing. I said I'd help anyone I could. Yeah, but everyone knows that words are cheap. It takes a real man to say something and stick to it despite his reservations. And that's coming from a guy whose quirk is literally to become a manly man. Mitsuda made a fist gesture. Izuku gazed for a little moment. It's a fist bump, man. Don't tell me you've never been fist bumped. I haven't. I have no one to share a fist bump with. With his right hand out, Midoriya Izuku met Mitsuda's punch. He felt a strange foreign thrill and excitement shoot through him. The pump of the fist. A fist bump. He gave someone a fist bump. Am I forming friendships? If you ever need an expert on pornography and endocrinology, I'm your guy. Thanks, Mitsuda-kun. I'm forming friendships. Now on to more serious issues. How the hell have you never masturbated before? You look at the tea time. No, you're not going anywhere until I teach you about one of the finer aspects of being a man. So basically, there are different grip styles, but the standard version typically looks like this, and you'll need something to lubricate. Midoriya Izuku felt the heat rising on his face with every word that Mitsuda said. He wanted nothing more than to put his hands over his ears and block out the words and ideas because of his own inexperience and mild discomfort with the topic at hand. He didn't. He could see Mitsuda's face, therefore he didn't. The enthusiasm surrounding it. The boy spoke and told with such passion, describing filthy ideas and evaluating offensive content with the same grace as a wine expert. There was the same type of zeal, emotion, and fervor that Izuku used to have when he spoke of heroes. The kind he was referring to when he discussed All Might. You're really passionate about this, you Mitsuda-kun? Uncomfortably, Mitsuda scratched his chin. Yeah. I guess. I haven't told anyone else this, but when I get older, I want to become an adult film star. There isn't much else I can see myself doing with my quirk. If I tried to take a normal office job or something, my libido would just get me into trouble. Rather than being the sleazy guy who everyone'd know can't keep it in his pants. I'd rather just take a job where I'd be praised for not keeping it in my pants. Mitsuda gave him a thumbs up and smiled. So, if you haven't gotten laid when I make it big, I'll be sure to introduce you to tons of hot girls, Midoriya. Izuku was unable to resist. A faint smile played at the corner of his lips. He laughed as they opened. Hey. I'm serious here. I know. It's just you have been searching for someone with whom to discuss this, have you not? Someone who would listen to you and not pass judgment on you, someone who would support you. Everyone earned that at the very least, didn't they? No matter how strange, peculiar, or out of the ordinary they were, everyone deserved to have at least one fan. Regardless of how absurd, insane, or unattainable their ambitions may be, that was the least that anyone deserved. Mitsuda-kun, I'm rooting for you, Izuku declared, putting out his fist. Why, you can do it. Go beyond plus ultra. For several seconds, Minoru Mitsuda's eyes widened as he stared. A smile twisted his lips as well. Thanks, Izuku. Midoriya Izuku, unable to contain his smile, nodded. He was confident that Mitsuda-kun would fulfill his aspirations eventually. For in the end, Mitsuda-kun wasn't a bad person, in spite of everything. With such an oddity, there were those in the world who would have fared worse. Who would have justified their actions with their peculiarity. Mitsuda-kun was not one of those individuals. To maintain optimism even when things doesn't go as planned. To Midoriya Izuku, people like that were real heroes. Oh, yeah, you want to be a hero, don't you, Izuku? If that's the case, I gotta show you one of my favorites. It's a parody of the 18+ only hero Midnight in her debut outfit that created the regulation for how much skin hero costumes are allowed to show true heroes, truly. A specific remark. What's got you grinning so much? Mostly, classes continued as usual following the lunch break. Izuku was unable to remain motionless, grinning and humming gently to himself. Kaken, did you know there's porn for every single mutant-type quirk out there? He suffocated on his own spit, Kitsuki Bakugo. He let out a loud cry in the middle of class, then abruptly turned to face Izuku and gave him a strange, alien-like stare. What the fuck? It's kinda nice. Don't you think? No one is left out and everyone has something for them. Everyone has someone who likes something they do and won't judge them for liking it too. Kaken dabbed at his nasal bridge. Did you fucking hit your head or something? Izuku remarked, I've just been thinking, Kaken. You were wrong. Sure, some people are mean, but it's because everyone has different stories. Everyone has their own little problems. We don't see it and so, a lot of times we think someone is angry or cruel when they're simply just sad. And lonely. Bakugo Kitsuki gave a snort. Izuku did not meet the boy's eyes. Oddly, Midoriya sensed that Kaken was attempting to avoid looking directly at him. Hey Izuku-kun, my hands are starting to hurt again. It was the same pug-faced girl. Her name was Rainu, again. Do you mind? Sorry, Izuku managed to seem a bit awkward. But I'll be helping you more by not helping you. I read that it's better for studying if you're reading your own notes than someone else. And I don't want to be the reason your grades slip, Rainu-san. But my sore hands. Izuku dug into his backpack. I got some hot packs you can use. And I could help you massage your hands after class. Under her breath, the girl in question murmured something. Great. Izuku smiled. It made him feel wonderful to plan ahead and bring hot packs for everybody who might have had painful hands. In this manner, he would address the illness at its root by improving their hands, as opposed to treating the symptom by assisting them in taking notes. In this manner, when they went home, they could still finish their homework. But Kaken was staring at him strangely. Izuku questioned why that was. Why the bloody hell are your teeth so shiny? The living area was immaculate. The TV remote was right underneath it. And the game console boxes were stacked top to bottom, labeled in red, green, and blue, and then sorted alphabetically. Izuku-kun, are you alright? Her boy had his nose deep in a book. Advanced anatomical knowledge. There were many more beside him, neatly piled and arranged. Acupuncture for acute pains. Palaces of memories for the masters of mind. The biological variations in the superhuman community. An exploration of the physiological adjustments of oddities and their significance for human society. An essay on quirk-related psychological phenomena and the argument of determinism. The quirk genome and the question of the penultimate stage of human evolution. Thick volumes. Heavy books, as heavy as a dictionary. Is something wrong, Kasan? No, nothing at all, just you're disturbing me. How are things going with your quirk? Great. Has there been anything odd? Or do you feel different? No. Why? The uncomfortable lump in her chest was swallowed. You cleaned the house. Without taking his nose off the book, he nodded. You did the laundry. Vacuumed the rug. Ironed the bedsheets. Mowed the lawn. Painted the fence. His fingers turned the page aimlessly as he gave another nod. You also reorganized the living room, she continued, gradually raising her voice. And the dining. And the bedrooms. I found a bag of our plates and silverware in the trash. Along with our old pillows. And old clothes. And your things. They were wrong. Midoriya Inko's heart began to beat more rapidly. Wrong. With a click, the book her kid was reading closed. Seeing his face slowly made her realize how much had changed in the last 3 months. By no means would she have described her son as ugly, quite the contrary. Her son Izuku had always been the most beautiful boy in the world and Izuku had always been her delight. However, since she was his mother, she had no choice but to say it, even though many would contest its objectivity. But this time, there was more than just maternal instincts coming through. Her son was becoming bigger every day and he seemed more attractive than the day before. His freckles appeared to have found their ideal location on his face, adding to rather than detracting from his overall attractiveness. Her son now had a more articulate, sharp appearance, as the coating of baby fat she had so much enjoyed seeing had miraculously disappeared and flattened down. After being a spiky mess for so long, his hair somehow managed to smooth itself out on its own, and she could see how incredibly silky it was from washing it and pulling it into the ponytail the youngster now wore. She wouldn't doubt Izuku's ability to succeed if he woke up one morning and informed her that he was going to become a male model. "Ah-san, we were wasting a lot of space with the rooms. Things weren't positioned in a way that made full use of the room while highlighting its aesthetics. I just put things in the proper order to make it look nicer and be more precise. And the plates. And cutlery." He winced. Izuku stammered as he said, "It's like. I couldn't stand looking at them. They weren't the method they were created with. Like looking at something that doesn't click. Bad designs. A square peg in a round hole or a chessboard with more white squares than black. They looked perfectly fine to me. One of the forks had a prong that was 4 centimeters shorter than the rest. And one of the butter knives was made with the edges facing the wrong side, and your clothes. They're no longer my size, Kasan." Midoriya Izuku felt her heart race. Even your all-might pajamas. "You know I stopped sleeping with anything on after I got my quirk. Once he acquired his oddity. And that was all. That was the beginning of it all. The instant when everything absolutely changed." She never mentioned the incident. She made every effort to block the incident from her mind. About how her son's peculiarity hadn't appeared in his sleep. It wasn't like he had suddenly woken up one morning and realized that he could be incredibly accurate at everything. When he discovered he had a talent, he never told her the whole reason why she had caught him acting in that way. She never mentioned it. She occasionally wished that it was just something in her head. She had sensed that once he received his quirk, things would be different. She was accurate. All she had to do was misjudge the nature of the difference. She had expected life would go on without incident. Her son would eventually fulfill his ambition to become a hero. To develop into a superb hero. That as a pair, they would become closer. That the long dinners of silence and unpleasant air would cease. That he would laugh, converse, and be more approachable with her. That they may finally be content together. And they were, for a little while. He filled her in on everything. He was more animated and chatted more. He talked about his days, his classes, and his activities while attending school. They were drawing nearer and nearer. Then, one day, he told her what he had done. Something of which he was pleased. She had also been horrified. Furious. She recalled the disagreement and firmly informed him that he was mistaken. That he ought to refrain from doing it in the future. She phoned the boy's parents who had made the disgusting request. The disputed object was located and destroyed. The youngster in question received severe punishment. Knowing that the boy was abusing her son's generosity, she took action. Forcing her son to act inappropriately for inappropriate motives. That was not how Izuku had viewed it. He had been enraged. More furious than she had ever witnessed. He genuinely thought that he was assisting the boy. Making every effort to help the boy. Some things had been said during the heated dispute that would never be forgotten. She angrily recalled them. He wouldn't have shown anyone. He had the portrait for weeks and never showed anyone. He was my friend. I believed in him. I believed in him like you could never believe in me. The remarks had hurt. She had sobbed silently before going to bed. Because it was true, the pain was worse. Because she had given up hope after learning that her son had no quirks. She was not convinced. Knowing that her kid would never again be able to fulfill his ambition, she had lost it. She'd given him empty smiles and encouraging words, even when he'd given it his all to want to be a hero despite his oddity. She never thought he could be a hero. And the realization that she had never believed in her own son's goal devastated her more than anything. Following the catastrophe, nothing had been the same. She had apologized, as had Izuku. She did so because she realized that whatever Izuku's motivations, what he did was wrong, and he did so because he was adamant about his actions and upset that she had cost him their friendship. They both moved on, putting the whole thing behind them for the most part. However, Izuku's relationship with her had changed. He stopped sharing his opinions with her. He stopped discussing his day. Rather than living with her own son, she felt as though she was living with a stranger or guest. He was either in the neighborhood library or the Katsuki residence most of the time. He never did anything but cook, eat, sleep, and get dressed again when he got home. Midoriya Izuku was at a loss as to how she would bring her kid back to her. How she would win back her own son's trust. I'm heading to Kaken's place. After gathering all of his books into a backpack, the child hoisted it over his shoulder. Izuku nibbled at her lip. Oh, alright. You'll be home in time for dinner, right? He put on his shoes in front of the door and said, I will. Midoriya Izuku opened the door and shut it behind him without even saying goodbye. Midoriya Izuku repeatedly asked herself, what can I do to stop this dull aching throb in my chest? And could only take a deep breath and bite her lower lip harder. How? This was something he detested. Stan fucking detested still. The boy danced around his movements, which he detested. How, with his nose deep in his filthy book, did he do it? How he avoided getting hit by his explosions by dodging their path before they reached him. How he would never stop talking about some ridiculous idea or dull research about peculiarities he was reading about. How his feet whirled and pirouetted, yet he never faltered or slipped. So, Dr. Mashimoto proposed that it's possible for villains who use their quirk to not be held accountable for their crimes due to certain quirks that trigger activities and impulses in the brain. Gritting his teeth, he slammed his two hands in front of him while yelling loudly. It was a loud explosion, Izuku. It nearly made him deaf. However, his physique was powerful. He had spent a lot of time conditioning his physique to withstand the backlash from his blasts. His skeleton had more power. His skin was harder. The shockwaves were nothing new to his ears. His hands were intolerant of the pressure and heat, but he knew that if he pushed his peculiarity to the breaking point, his hands would break. Nevertheless, he did it. This move was supposed to be his finishing move. His master stroke. He was aiming for a moniker similar to Hotzer, though he hadn't decided on one yet. The name didn't appeal to him. All he wanted was to triumph. He desired victory. The ash settled. The smoke parted. There was no sign of the annoying green-haired ponytail person. There have also been incidents of people turning to villainy because of societal pressure and them being perceived that they have a villainous or evil quirk. Once the Pygmalion effect kicks in, people who could have otherwise been heroes end up being shunned. Damn it. He exclaimed, instinctively spinning around and launching a blast into the void. When he realized that no one was following him, his eyes grew wide. He had once more fallen for it. Izuku and his stupid ventriloquist nonsense are so annoying. His palms ricocheted as he turned back as fast as he could and one finger extended to stab him in the forehead. The boy said, Kaken, tag. So, anyway, I think there's more to this whole thing than we realized. It's not that I don't like getting special treatment for my quirk, I just don't like it when other people are you even listening? He growled, what the fuck do you think this was? A feeling he detested. Hated it. It was reviled, hated, detested. He had two scorched arms. Aching. Pulsing. His figure was soaked with sweat. Soaking through his shirt. Trailing off his brow. He was seriously panting. Worn out. Weary. And yet he hasn't even perspired a drop. Izuku's book snapped shut. He had a distinct difference in certain aspects. It was self-assurance. The confidence, screw it. And that was all. All that had changed in the last 3 months was that. Izuku started assisting everyone who even slightly begged for money, and he did so with ever greater flair and gusto. He also spoke to more people and stopped stuttering and muttering, and the more people he helped and the more he spoke to, the less nervous he got about speaking and the more self-assured he became. Naturally, Katsuki was all too familiar with the experience. To possess a fantastic oddity. Possess natural talent. Now, everyone loved Izuku. They revered the fucking earth that he trod. Shops gave him discounts. Lunches at the cafeteria are free. Events invitations. The green-haired idiot was the kind of person who didn't require particular attention, of course. Yes, he enjoyed it, but he wasn't interested in it. He declined it. And exactly as a result, he was labeled as humble, which only served to increase the admiration for anything he accomplished because the young man lacked the confidence to boast. It took him a moment to gather himself before saying, that shit you mentioned, the Pygmalion whatever. That's the self-fulfilling prophecy thing, isn't it? Twice did Midoriya blink. There was no covering up the same idiotic grin the nerd usually had, no matter how much his face had stopped appearing nerdy and started looking too fucking pretty boyish for Katsuki's liking. You were listening. Of course I fucking was, he said in a low voice. He raised his half-burned hands and said, I can fucking kick your ass and still listen to your nerd gibberish. You explained that shit once. Something about how what we do to other people impacts what other people believe about us and cause them to behave the fucking way to us, which reinforces our own beliefs about ourselves and go back full circle to influence the shit we do to other people. Katsuki was not a moron. He could make the connection between the events that befell him and the things Izuku was constantly complaining about. In that sense, he was everything from subtle. What had happened to Izuku was that self-fulfilling nonsense. In the days when he was quirky and pitiful, he was told these things every day, which made him think the same of himself. He then acted in a pitiful and quirky manner, leading other people to correctly assume the same of him and treat him accordingly. Now, things were different. He now had a wonderful peculiarity that he went above and above to use for the benefit of others. Others regarded him as though he was wonderful since they were aware of his wonderful peculiarity. It felt nice to be appreciated for his unique peculiarity. And he did it because he felt fantastic. And because he behaved so well, everyone thought he was amazing, which made them treat him as such, and so the vicious cycle continued. Kitsuki was unaffected. The fact that Izuku was at last developing a pair of balls on his own pleased him much. He was having trouble with Izuku's incredibly aggravating habit of stopping whatever he was doing to assist someone in need. The nerd understood that the person he was assisting might be using him, yet he still couldn't help them no matter what. So what, you're saying that there's people out there who'd become villain scum, just they're born with a shitty quirk that'd make them good at being fucking villain, and everyone treats them like villains cause of it. Exactly. Izuku enthusiastically nodded his head. It's wrong. Kitsuki gave a snort. It's how things are. If they don't have the guts to say fuck off to their haters, that's their problem. But things don't have to be that way, Kaken. Don't you see? Izuku responded. Being a villain is the symptom, not the disease. If we could find the disease at its heart and stop villains before they even become villains, Kitsuki growled, then what? You'd put heroes out of fucking business. That whole idea has fucking holes. You're forgetting assholes that are assholes just because they want to be assholes. Not everyone has a fucking sob story to justify why they're an asshole. Then with those ones, we'd help them try to reform them, and what'll you do if they don't fucking want to be reformed? Izuku's lips were pursed. Then we make them reformed. Kitsuki raised an eyebrow. Make them? Like what, brainwash them? It's better than locking them up all for life and letting them rot away somewhere when their quirks can still be used to help people or save lives or make the world a better place. Kitsuki's eyebrow raised somewhat more. Oi, you need to stop reading those fucking books of yours, Izuku. But if you really fucking think that brainwashing people to do shit you want them to do is a good fucking thing, then you're a bit more fucked up in the head than I thought. Izuku scowled. It's not like I'm suggesting to steal everyone's free will, just villains who choose not to be reformed. Is making them rot away in a jail cell supposed to be better? It's their fucking choice. They fucking chose, and it's not in your place to play God and tell him to choose differently. Before he had his quirk, Kitsuki fucking favored Izuku, even though he didn't want to acknowledge it sometimes. On occasion. The youngster annoyed him in many ways, like being a whiner, a mopey, pitiful, and a lot of other things, but at least he wasn't as full of stupid ideas. That was all he wanted, to be a hero. Other than being a hero, he didn't give a damn. May accomplish much more than just want to be a hero. It was understandable that he had a single aim and was focused on it. Quirk Izuku was not like the other. Although he disliked violence, he would beat you till you lost your mind to defend someone. As long as someone had a decent enough sob tale, he would bow his head to their wishes. It wasn't that he wasn't kind, rather, the boy's problem was that he was kind too much. He was too close to every single object and every single person. He aspired to be a hero in order to rescue as many lives as he could. He wished to keep everyone alive. Quirk Izuku was proactive, which was the issue. Izuku didn't like how heroes were by nature fucking reactive. Once the catastrophe had occurred and the villain had struck, they only took action in defense, spoke up after others had spoken, and came to save the day. Izuku aspired to be a hero who stopped the tragedies. That put an end to the villains before they had a chance to even screw around being villains. That stepped in without being asked and stopped evil before it had a chance to happen. That was more like being a god, in Kitsuki's opinion, than it was being a hero. And Midoriya Izuku had the fortitude to go for that objective in spite of everything. How did you manage to escape my attack range? He finally questioned. It's been fucking bugging me. Your quirk gives you super reflexes and all, I fucking get that. But it doesn't give you super speed or let you fucking teleport. Your major weakness is widespread attacks that you can't dodge or evade. But you somehow fucking got out of range of it anyway. Izuku blinked, as though bringing something to mind. I was never in range. What do you mean you were never in fucking range? You were right in front of me. Izuku pursed his lips and said, for the brief second when you charged your assault. But there's about 3 seconds of delay before you activate a powerful move, Kaken. Also, when you use stronger explosions, your blasts obstruct your view. I used those seconds between your wind-up and your attack to get behind you. Kitsuki's eyes became larger gradually. Wait, so when I fucking heard your voice behind me I was actually behind you. But I turned around, Izuku clarified, and I mimicked your movements and turned around with you. Like a sleight of hand trick where you hide a card in between your fingers and because of different angles perception, it isn't seen by people in front of you but can be seen by those behind. Hell on a wheel. Under his breath, Kitsuki Bakugo complained, feeling his annoyance increase upon realizing he'd been duped. 3 freaking seconds of delay. How on earth did you even get there? Next time Izuku, I'll fucking kick your ass. I'm looking forward to it, Kaken. Currently, Kitsuki Bakugo has never prevailed over Midoriya Izuku in a combat situation. But then, Midoriya Izuku had also never truly defeated Bakugo in combat. This was due to the fact that Midoriya only ever dodged and avoided attacks, rather than ever fighting back. It was intended to aid Bakugo's own evasive skills, as well as finish battles when Midoriya touched him a predetermined amount of times. When they had initially fought, Bakugo had been furious that he couldn't hit him, had argued that Midoriya had fought back, and hadn't let up until Midoriya took action. Something that Kitsuki Bakugo would carry with him to his grave. He made him laugh. He gave Bakugo a tickle. Kitsuki Bakugo was extremely shy because no one in his entire life had the courage to try something like that, and he never developed a resistance to it. Without any remorse, Midoriya had taken advantage of this vulnerability to tickle Bakugo until he literally passed out from laughing. He awoke enraged and prepared to fight. And for the second time, Midoriya tickled him into unconsciousness. After that, Bakugo gave up attempting to make Midoriya fight back. It's getting pretty late. We should get back in time for dinner. I'll even help your mom cook. You go anywhere near my kitchen again and I will gut you. We both know I have the better knife handling, Kaken. Every time you cook, you turn it into a bloody science experiment. I can't help it if I want to be precise when cooking. I caught you fucking counting the grains of salt, Izuku. The fucking grains of salt. Kitsuki screamed. And you were flicking away perfectly good rice with some bullshit that they weren't tall enough. But they weren't. It's fucking rice. It's not supposed to be tall. But it shouldn't be shorter than the other rice grains in the bowl. Who the fuck cares? I care. My mouth would notice the difference if some rice grains were shorter than others. Then tell your mouth to suck it up and manage the uneven rice like everyone else. God forbid, Izuku fucking. At Aldera Junior High, a new week had begun. Kitsuki Bakugo and his friend were strolling around the corridors. The child was smiling as usual, flashing those ridiculously bright teeth to gullible onlookers. Hey. Izuku-kun. Looking good, man. Thanks, Natsu-san. Hey, Midoriya-kun, good morning. Morning, Yatsuhara-san. Hey, Izuku-kun, I've got to get these books to the teacher's office, mind giving me a hand? Sure thing. Kitsuki Bakugo gave the boy who made the request a fierce gaze. His thumb and index finger were surrounded by tiny sparkles and explosions as his right eye twitched and his right hand raised. He then rotated his neck to the side and dragged that thumb along his neck. The message was quickly received by the mob. Don't worry about it. I shouldn't really be bothering you. It's not a bother at all. I mean, it's tea training. Why yeah. I'm strength tea training. Bye. With the books in hand, the child scampered off, leaving Midoriya rubbing the back of his head as he went through the hallways. That was weird, Kaken. Would he ask for my help if he was training? Kitsuki gave a snort. He threw his backpack over his shoulder and said, why the fuck does anyone do anything? Whatever. Let's go. Kitsuki was aware that most of the time in class was boring. The teacher didn't teach him anything that he didn't previously know. And there was a 50% chance that Izuku knew something that he fucking didn't. Izuku used class as an opportunity for anything else, mostly pulling out his fucking encyclopedia-sized volumes and reading them. Izuku continued to take notes with his right hand held aside while listening to the teacher, allowing him to respond to questions as they were posed, thus the teacher was unable to call him out on it. Kitsuki recognized that most individuals weren't really that good at multitasking. One task would inevitably take precedence over another unless the individual attempting to multitask had several limbs and a brain capable of controlling all of those limbs at the same time. Alright, I'm even zoning out of class now. The user of explosion quirk thought the teacher's lessons were dull. Even though he would never fucking acknowledge it to the boy's face, Izuku was a better instructor. Izuku never had to repeat himself when he communicated an idea. It just clicked for some reason. Simply put, stuck. Kitsuki knew, of course, that it was just his shy little quirk at work. Izuku's peculiarity might make him the world's greatest teacher ever, since he had a unique ability to instruct individuals at a pace and level that suited them perfectly. Kitsuki found himself daydreaming during class as a result, considering Izuku's foolish remarks about several topics. In one of the texts he read, the author discussed how individual differences in quirks led to variations in physiology. Until Izuku mentioned it, Kitsuki had never stopped wondering why the substance he used to create his explosions could only be secreted by the sweat of his hands. Naturally, he had examined if perspiration from other areas of his body could also cause it, but there had been no cigar. Only his hands. That is to say, only the sweat glands on his hands. It also implied that he would not have any peculiarities if he ever lost his hands. Users with mutant-type quirks were fucking unique. Their whole physiology was their quirk, they never had to worry about losing it if they ever became incapacitated, despite the fact that it occasionally turned them into fugly-looking bastards. Although Katsuki didn't think it would actually happen, he couldn't rule out the idea. He was never going to turn into a wide-eyed, gullible hero who thought everything would turn out okay in the end. He desired to be the most powerful hero, the fucking greatest hero, and the greatest hero is someone who is aware of their own weaknesses. Understand your own vulnerabilities well enough to have a backup plan ready in the event that you faced off against someone who was also capable of figuring things out. Contemplating one's shortcomings, he gave Izuku a quick sidelong glance. "Oi Izuku." He gestured to a girl seated in the front row and said, "If you wanted to take down Suzume, how would you do it?" The youngster never looked away from his book. "Easily. Suzume-san's quirk lets her feel the emotions of other people around her. She's not really good in combat. I'd just knock her out with a hit to the side of the head." "And him," the man gestured. "Natsu-san. Natsu-san's quirk lets him absorb sunlight and make himself glow. It's not really combat-oriented either. How about sensei?" Izuku's right hand came to a standstill. He looked up from the book, his pen resting gently on his lips as he thought. "Sensei's quirk is stretchy fingers, isn't it? He can stretch his fingers up to 8 meters. The best thing I could think of would be to restrict his movements by tying his fingers together when they stretch in my direction. I could also use them to tie him up and he won't be able to untie them by himself then," declared Katsuki. "All Might. What? If you wanted to beat All Might, how would you do it?" "Why would I ever want to fight All Might? Maybe he gets mind controlled by a villain or it's his evil clone or whatever. Doesn't matter. How would you do it?" Midoriya Izuku's fingers clenched with focus. "I would try to avoid fighting him. Or use distractions to keep him busy." Katsuki's eyebrow shot upward. "What do you mean, distractions?" "All Might's speed, strength, and power is too high to overcome. His stamina is something else too, so I can't win in any category." As soon as Izuku resumed his peculiar muttering, Katsuki realized he had gone too far. "I could try to neutralize All Might with something that'd render him unconscious, such as a gas, but no, that won't work. All Might's resistance to most harmful chemicals is known, especially in that fight with Toxic Chainsaw. An alternative tactic would be to make All Might surrender on his own, but that would require a hostage-like situation, and if it's against an evil clone of All Might, he wouldn't care. So, the only way to stop All Might would be to be able to withstand the power and speed of his attacks and deliver them back in equal or superior quantities. A counter. Shock absorption. No, shock nullification. A quirk which can reflect damage. But that's not taking into account All Might's own determination, so it wouldn't work for too long unless I can nullify All Might's quirk, but that's not possible, not unless I have the Erasure hero, Eraserhead, on my side, but I don't see how I would. Well, unless it's an evil All Might we're talking about, but then that wouldn't really be me stopping him. Oi, Izuku, don't bother." The boy's murmuring ended. More persuaded than ever, Katsuki exclaimed, "All Might. He's the strongest hero. If even your bullshit quirk can't think of way to beat him on your own, then there's no fucking doubt about it." Katsuki felt a tinge of comfort from it. It ignited a fire beneath him, realizing how far he still needed to travel to attain that level. To occupy the top position. To possess unparalleled power, strength, and speed. One day, he would arrive. He knew he would absolutely arrive. All he had to do was work 5 times as hard as he had ever worked before. Until now he'd been far too complacent. Too sure of herself, thus far. It was Izuku's quirk that had opened our eyes. The harsh pill that kept him grounded. He had always been gifted and had never really put in much effort. But Katsuki was not going to back off now. He intended to exert himself to the maximum extent possible until he managed to overcome Izuku's incompetent reactions. Make himself quick enough to avoid someone whose response was quicker than his or her own mental process. Hold on, thinking rate. "Boy Izuku, do you think you could dodge a bullet?" The child rubbed the back of his head and said, I might. I mean, I've never tried, but I think I maybe could." That was alright, Katsuki considered. All he had to do now was accelerate himself beyond the speed of a bullet. As the school day drew to an end, Midoriya Izuku folded his hands and folded his rucksack over his suitcase in preparation for leaving. For some strange reason, all day long, individuals had come to him asking for assistance, but at the last minute, they would abruptly decide not to and run away from him. He had questioned Kaken about why it was occurring, but Kaken was just being himself and didn't seem to give a damn. The only thing that came to mind for Izuku while he searched for today's anomaly was the fact that Kaken had accompanied him the entire time. Was it because people avoided approaching Kaken as frequently as they used to because they were inherently afraid of him? No, that is not possible. Actually, Kaken wasn't all that scary. He was more of a softie than he gave off the impression. What, then, was the specific reason behind their turning around and leaving? He made the decision to give it a go and informed Kaken of his whereabouts. Though there was no reason Kaken couldn't follow him, he did have somewhere to be. Where's that? It's kinda secret. Kaken furrowed his brow. Secret? I'm meeting up with Mitsuda-san. Matsu Kaken scowled. That pervert that's always hiding his fucking boners in class. What the hell are you meeting him for? He said he wanted to introduce me to some people he knows, Izuku stated. Fellow comic book and manga enthusiasts. You know. It's an A club. A fucking otaku club. Izuku stroked the side of his chin and said, well. This point, he could not refute it. Yeah. Kaken scowled at the scene. Nerds. Fine. Whatever. We'll meet up tomorrow. Sure. See you later, Kaken. Kaken, ever sullen, waved back and mumbled his own farewell. Izuku Midoriya closed his eyes, made sure he was out of earshot, and smiled to himself. First, let's see if anyone around the school needs my help. As most of the students who weren't in extracurricular clubs had left for the day, Izuku took his time making sure nobody was in need of help by going around the school. He discovered books, rulers, pens, and jotters left by previous pupils in a few vacant classrooms. He took care to pick them all up to make sure he returned the missing objects to their owners the following morning and to check the registers to see who was seated where. Izuku took careful to remove packing and litter from some unclean courses and place them in the proper bins while also clearing any dust and debris. He proceeded from classroom to classroom, leaving motivational notes for the first pupils who would arrive at school in the morning, using any extra chalk he could find. Smiling chibi-style artworks of All Might are displayed alongside phrases like "you can do it," "try your hardest everyone," and "go beyond." Plus ultra. If nothing else, the first pupils in class the next morning would have something to look forward to. It's getting late. Izuku took the circuitous route out of the school grounds and towards the train station. He made a few stops to assist a young student whose ice cream had slipped from his scoop, to help another group of students cross the street, and to make a diversion via the park, where he ran upon his all-time favorite animal friend. "Sir Kuro-kun, how's your day today?" The cat rubbed its cheeks against Izuku's legs and purred. "I can't stay and play with you for long, sorry. But I saved up some snacks from lunch. Takoyaki your favorite." After feeding Sir Kuro the Shinigami and saying goodbye, Izuku was disturbed to discover that the cat had followed him out of the park. "Sir Kuro, you know you're not being stealthy." The feline purred. Izuku let out a sigh. "Fine, I guess you're coming along with me." Izuku made sure the zipper was ajar enough for Sir Kuro to poke his head out and breathe. The cat fit snugly within Sir Kuro's backpack. While riding the train from Usatafu to the Kamino ward, Midoriya Izuku dug into his luggage for a book he was reading, being cautious not to wake Sir Kuro. Acupuncture to treat severe pain. He stopped and found the bookmark, which he relished in reading. Despite having its roots in ancient Chinese medicine and frequently being dismissed by scientists as having no apparent health benefits, the emergence of superhuman societies and oddities gave people the realization that things that were once considered myths actually had a lot of historical significance. The practice of acupuncture is becoming more and more popular, and there are many schools that teach it. One such school is the School of Apotheosis, founded by Master Tang Li, a man whose peculiarity gives him command over Kai energy, allowing him to do things that were previously thought to be exclusive to wuxia books. Through his mastery of the 7 inquiries, Master Tang Li has demonstrated the effects of acupuncture on a number of bodily functions, including fever, chills, perspiration, appetite, thirst, taste, defecation and urination, and sleep. Though the main focus of this book is on reducing, eliminating, and relieving pain, we will also quickly take a peek at the other 7 inquiries and discover how acupuncture can treat fevers, enhance or control appetite, and even treat insomnia. At the specified station, the train stopped and Midoriya Izuku bookmarked his page again before putting his book back in his bag. He cautiously slung it over his shoulder to avoid waking Sir Kuro and headed for his goal. It was a bookstore named The Hero's Jump, according to Mitsuda-kun. Even when Izuku visited a place he had never been before, navigating around was straightforward because he just needed to glance at a map on his phone once. A detailed, exact blueprint of it lodged in his mind. He picked up the method from Memory Palaces for the Mental Masters, a different book he owned. He owed Mitsuda a debt of gratitude for the referral. When he said that he had committed every single hentai doujin he had ever read or seen to memory, Mitsuda was not kidding. It wasn't that he had overstated. The youngster had taken steps to ensure he would always remember them, even going so far as to master memory techniques. Izuku detested the perception that Mitsuda's interests and inclinations made him a horrible guy. He wasn't. Like everyone else, he was simply an ordinary person trying to make the most of what he had. That was the reason Izuku felt guilty after he made the error of telling his mother what he had done for Mitsuda. His mum hadn't comprehended. She was unaware of Mitsuda. She refused to accept that Mitsuda was not a weirdo or a terrible person. Izuku realized that he was to blame. It was his responsibility for attempting to explain to his mother all he had done. To make an effort to put the hurt of the past behind us and move on with her. Again, one more time she didn't think highly of him. All he ever desired from her was that. To have faith in him. Was asking for too much? Was it? He had anticipated Mitsuda's wrath towards him. Annoyed with him. Sincerely angry with him. Upon their first meeting at school, following a spanking at home, the boy had instead shrugged and shook his head, saying, "I'm already used to it." Midoriya felt the sting. That he had betrayed someone's confidence by putting his trust in someone else hurt. Even Mitsuda-kun's parents lacked faith in him, and Izuku, someone who had once trusted him, betrayed him in a way that was almost unbearable. As he neared his goal, Izuku steeled his breathing and his thoughts. True, the hero's jump was a comic book store, but it also appeared to function as a library or cafe of some kind. The bell softly chimed as he entered, and he was met by row upon row of bookcases brimming with rare action figures and posters of Hawks, Endeavor, and All Might up for grabs. Naturally, there was an 18-plus area with a yawning adolescent in uniform sitting in front of it, probably to discourage younger people from going in. "Hey Izuku. Over here." From a bench with 3 others, Mitsuda gestured him over. Overcoming his own reluctance and discomfort, he went up to the group. Hey Mitsuda-san, he rolled his eyes. "Drop the san already. Don't tell me you're still thinking about that stuff that happened." He was waved off by Mitsuda. "Leave it behind. Parenthood will always exist." So, he said, draping his right hand over Izuku's shoulder. "Izuku-kun, allow me to introduce you to some of my friends." The legion of hentai aficionados. 1 female and 2 boys were present. One of the youngsters appeared to have a head shaped like a speech bubble. There was another one who was short and had purple hair that appeared to be rolled into balls. Among the bunch, the girl, who was the third, was the most peculiar. Strangest, since she appeared so elegant. She was, in some way, the most striking of the group, with her pale skin, cat-like eyes, thick top lashes, and straight waist-length pale gray hair. Does she have on a monocle? Indeed, she was. She had a monocle over her right eye, no doubt about it. Hey Mitsuda. Stop introducing us like wham, we're hentai readers. We read other stuff too, that goes like bam and kaboom. Izuku's head tipped. Kaboom? Nodding, the speech bubble youngster did. Kaboom. Allow me to introduce you. Izuku, meet my friend Fukudashi Manga. You can probably tell, but he tends to love a lot of manga expressions and onomatopoeia. Mitsuda said. The idiot with the purple balls for hair trying to talk to the girl out of his league is my cousin, Mineta. There are no such things as leagues, damn you. And, Mitsuda continued, the Oju-sama over there is intelli-psycho. She's wicked smart, but even if she didn't have an IQ of 150, she'd know never to give Mineta the time of day. Curse you, blood of my blood. Mitsuda shook his head, dude, I keep telling you, the thirstier you appear, the lower your odds. Anyway, everyone, this is Midoriya Izuku. Eldera Junior High's A student. I'm slowly inducting him into our world. Yo, nice to meet you Izuku. Let's have some POW and RA tat. He's saying let's enjoy ourselves, Mitsuda explained. Izuku managed to say, ah. The boy's brows narrowed as Mineta fixed her gaze on him. Mitsuda, you didn't tell me your companion was a pretty boy. I dislike attractive boys. Pretty boys don't appeal to us. For the rest of us, pretty boys are bad news. Ah, I'm not, really you look like the sub in a yaoi manga. Thank you. I believe Mineta sulked. Fine. I'll test you. Boobs or butts? Izuku gave a blink. What? Which are more divine, pretty boy? Tits or ass? Discard him, Mitsuda remarked. I've learned to. We have to know where he stands. Boobs. Mineta gave a wise nod. A fellow man of culture. Mitsuda ran a hand over his face. Manga made fun of the cousins, but Psycho appeared to be quietly watching everything. Now for the final test. Big titties or small titties? Mitsuda cautioned, Mineta does size even matter? Mineta sprang up and smashed his fists on the table, putting his fist in the air and exclaiming, you're right. Titties are titties. Size, shape, it doesn't matter. All boobs are the best boobs. All boobs deserve tender love and care. To be squeezed. To be groped. For those wonderful nipples to grace eager lips and act. With his right elbow, Mitsuda choked his younger relative, causing the boy's eyelids to twitch. Excuse me for a moment, Izuku my cousin and I need to have a talk. You can't suppress my gospel. The truth must be known. A prophet is always rejected by his own people. Izuku. Preach my gospel. Carry on my message. Do not let me demise be in vain. Izuku attempted to control his trembling chuckle upon seeing. I never imagined meeting someone with Mitsuda's level of intensity. Midoriya-san, is it? He had never heard Psycho talk before. As anticipated, her voice and Japanese were obviously of a higher caliber. Different, to put it mildly, from what the others utilized. Ah yes, that's me. Her fingers were coiled tightly. I declare myself to be a genius. That's great. You must certainly be wondering what someone of my station is doing in a place like this, must you not? Rubbing the back of his head, Midoriya said, well. No, not really. Different people have different interests, so I can't really judge you or anything. If you like reading manga or hentai, then that's cool too. It's always nice to have hobbies and people you can share them with. Saiko paused before continuing. She pressed her lips together. I was not expecting such acceptance so easily. It's alright, replied Midoriya. He looked at manga. So, how did you all meet? A comic convention, Comic-Con, boom. Ah. We were all fans of a particular niche mangaka who only makes a certain type of work. Manga-kun, Mitsuda-kun and I were the only 3 individuals who knew who she was and who requested signatures. We sat for a cup of tea and discussed our interests. Later on, Mitsuda-kun introduced his cousin. She uttered that word with some annoyance. Izuku suspected that Saiko didn't really like Mineta. Regardless, Midoriya-san, Mitsuda-kun mentioned that you were something of an artist yourself. Though, for some reason, he said he made a promise to not show or mention what it is you draw. Midoriya's face turned red. A gentle thump could be heard in his chest. Well, I'm not, I mean I am, but it's mostly because of my quirk. Curious now, Manga and Saiko leaned nearer. My quirk is called precision. Basically, it lets me do anything in the world that requires even the tiniest bit of precision and do it without error. It also makes me more precise, but I still haven't figured out by how much or if there's more to it. With a cool, Manga said. Very cool. Saiko nodded in agreement with the assessment. That is a rather amazing quirk. Ah, that's true. What's yours? My quirk is called comic. It lets me bring my words to life and sets heart alight like ba dumb. Izuku gazed at the onomatopoeic floating characters, the doki doki from the manga, as they moved through the air and gently touched the table, causing it to tremble twice, comparable to a heartbeat. That's so cool. Thanks, yo. Saiko cleared her throat. My quirk isn't something as visual, unfortunately. It's called IQ. It lets me boost my intellect by drinking tea. Izuku blinked at that information. Boost mental capacity. Does the type of tea you drink matter? Saiko grinned. It does. Astute observation, Midoriya-san. Wait, but you're already a genius. Mitsuda said you have an IQ of 150. Saiko got ready. I am. And I do. And your quirk boosts that. It does. Wow, that's incredible. Shouted Midoriya. I can't even imagine what that's like. Like what goes through your mind and what you're always thinking about or thoughts and ideas and concepts that you brainstorm must be. Saiko was giving him a strange look. Midoriya stopped himself, his cheeks starting to heat up. I'm getting off topic. I nearly started talking non-stop again. Your quirk is far more impressive, the way I see it. If you can be extremely precise, does that not mean you could do impossible things such as master how to perform brain surgery in one day? Or engineer gadgets and devices with a mechanical intricacy that cannot be rivaled by machines? I suppose, Saiko murmured. So I take it you're applying to a distinguished medical school. Or perhaps a top-name engineering institution. Actually, I want to become a hero. A hero? With your quirk? Saiko asked, her lips slightly thinning. Well, you could certainly succeed at such, but wouldn't that be a waste? What do you mean? You could save a lot more lives and contribute a lot more to society as a doctor or surgeon. Or perhaps even an inventor. In comparison, there are only so many people you can save as a hero, and the risks and odds of injuries and death are exponentially higher for pro heroes than surgeons. It's my dream to be a hero. And following your dreams is a nice advice that works great in manga and anime, but shouldn't be taken at face value in real life. She was referring to herself. While I was younger, I also wanted to be a hero. Imagine that. With my IQ and a quirk that could multiply it, and the best way I thought I could contribute to society was to put my life on the line in a profession that addresses the symptoms of a disease and not the cause. Izuku was flinching uncontrollably. Saiko saw it right away. Oh, so, you've also had that thought too, haven't you? About how pro-heroes are basically band-aids for a cancerous wound. The symbol of peace is the strongest deterrent to crime, but the symbol of peace isn't immortal. A day will come, perhaps not now, not tomorrow, but a day will come when the symbol of peace is gone, and then, what exactly will become of society? Whoa, Kinda got heavy. Manga interrupted, breathing heavily. Saiko scowled. Did it? I apologize. As a side effect of both my quirk and my intellect, I have been told I am lacking severely in emotional intelligence and empathy. Spending more time with people is supposed to aid me in better understanding why people tend to default to emotions than logic, but I have not gained much success in that regard. Changing topics, Midoriya-san, may I see your quirk in action? Even though he was trying to ignore the words and the dull pointless sting in his chest, Midoriya had allowed himself to breathe. My quirk? Yeah. Let's see your drawing chops. Manga took out a sketchbook and pencil from within his rucksack. The items ended up in Midoriya's possession. Do you take requests, Midoriya-san? Sure, what would you like? Endeavor and All Might in a passionate lover's embrace. Well oh no, the All Might acolyte cried out. Not at all. 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 Any other requests? Was something wrong with my original? With a somber look at Manga, Midoriya coughed into his palm. Aid me. It's somewhat of a tall challenge for his first request, Psycho. Maybe someone less muscly. After scowling slightly, Psycho nodded. I understand. I'm grateful. Midoriya gave a mouthful. Best genist and Hawks in a lover's embrace should be far easier. Midoriya said, how about I just draw you? Me? I'm not so vain as to ask of a portrait of myself. Why you should, insisted Midoriya. You really should. You're beautiful. Why you'd make an excellent muse. Well, Psycho stumbled to speak. I appreciate the flattery. If you insist, then I suppose. I would not mind. Izuku and Midoriya exhaled in unison, relieved. Izuku made no hesitations and didn't offer Psycho an opportunity to reconsider. He twisted the pencil between his fingers with his right hand and began to draw, focusing on something far more elegant and ideal and objective, drawing deeply from his feelings regarding Psycho's aura instead of just drawing a basic picture. Printing out his vision, his right hand quickly moved from left to right along the sketchpad. 30 seconds later, his work was done and he exhaled with relief. Done. Manga exclaimed, whoa. Can I see it? The portrait was unique. Though it was of Psycho in a different guise, it was still of her. In the picture, she was wearing a sophisticated business suit, grinning broadly and gazing mischievously intelligently right into the eyes of anyone happened to glance at it. He didn't pay much attention to the background, but the details in the foreground, including her nose's curve, chin's arch, and the quantity of lashes on her brow, caught his attention. Drawn with minute attention to detail. One more portrait that might pass for a picture. For a few moments, Psycho gazed at it in quiet reflection. Midoriya-san, why yes. Would you be willing to consider a quirk marriage with me? Izuku. Midoriya choked on his own saliva. We're back. What did we miss? When Mitsuda and Mineta arrived to the scene, they found Manga laughing, Psycho's eyes shining with delight at a masterfully rendered image, and Midoriya Izuku sputtering and choking and pleading for water. I'll take it we missed a lot. Midoriya Izuku felt himself conscious of the passage of time. There was constantly a counting of the seconds that turned into minutes and the minutes that became into hours. Midoriya Izuku was always cognizant of the passing of time, even though the evening went well and Manga shared his incredible collection of manga. He even displayed some mint-quality comic books from the pre-QUIRK era, which everyone got lost in. Did villains in the pre-QUIRK era really do such tacky things? Replied Mitsuda. He gently tapped on a comic book. I mean, doomsday devices, plans for global domination, destroying the earth, leading armies of aliens to attack. These books are fiction, Mitsuda-kun. There weren't any villains or heroes in the pre-QUIRK era because there were no quirks. That's why we call it the pre-QUIRK era. Psycho clarified. Mitsuda looked back into his comic strip, his mouth curving into a O. Huh. Makes sense. I mean, I guess no one would really know what a world with powers would look like, so they could only have guessed that some people would use their powers for crazy stuff like this. Slowly, he closed the comic. At least one thing they got right is that the villains always lose and the heroes always win. Mineta giggled, I just like the costumes. Look skin-tight leotards. And here her outfit has a boob window. And look at this one. Red skin and barely wearing anything. Damn it, Mineta, you know I can't. Midoriya winced at Mitsuda's state. It took very little to get him angry. After catching a brief view of the beautifully rendered but occasionally dubious attire choices of the female superheroes in comic books, Mitsuda rose up, mumbled an apology and went to the loo. Midoriya was very certain that he wouldn't be coming out for a while. That's not nice of you, Mineta-san. The boy with grape hair, tiny stature, snorted. Like hell it is. I wish I had a quirk that could let me get hard so easily. Lucky bastard'll be able to go 100 rounds when he gets older. He'd be the stud king of stud kings. It inconveniences his daily life, makes things difficult. Mineta pulled up a comic book featuring a man with a purple face and golden gauge glasses and she read aloud from the speech bubble. A small price to pay for salvation. The lips of Midoriya thinned. Mineta was not persuaded. He was unable to see the wider picture. He was blind to the drawbacks of his cousin's eccentricity and only perceived its advantages. Or maybe it was the other way around. Mineta believed that despite all the drawbacks, there were still advantages. That was how unjust it was all along. Seldom were people with personalities perfect for particular peculiarities, also those with those quirks. In fact, the situation was just the reverse. A quirk ultimately had an impact on the personalities of those who owned them, whether directly or indirectly. Their interests, personalities, aspirations, and life objectives. In the end, your quirk defined who you were. That was the reason he trembled for individuals whose peculiarities forced them into roles of villainy. Goals hung before their faces like a forbidden fruit dangling in front of God's gardeners for those who had no idiosyncrasies at all and were forced to live ordinary lives out of resignation. Midoriya had no religious beliefs. Not in this day and age either, for the majority of people. However, there were still very few adherents of the Church of the Illuminated. Those who revered the first person known to have a quirk. The renowned luminescent baby who radiated with otherworldly light and was born in King City, China. Some people at the time referred to the child in the history books as the second coming of a Western Messiah. A growing number of people had fervent beliefs and the Church of the Illuminated expanded. But as oddity spread in society, the fervor for religion waned. Becoming able to walk on water or turn orange juice into alcohol made glowing seem less remarkable, and people's faith in the paranormal waned. Alternatively, there were theological tenets that claimed to believe in fate and destiny. One such religion was that of the cosmos is chosen. That having a certain quirk at birth was fate or destiny. That there was a purpose behind your oddity and it was up to you to figure it out. With the discovery of the quirk factor and the understanding of how oddities used Mendelian laws of biological heredity, that religion also vanished. Something on your mind, Midoriya-kun? Psycho spoke in a quiet tone. It pulled him out of his reverie. Recalling her invitation, Izuku attempted to control the heat that was pouring into his face. Recalling that he had not responded to her. She had good looks. But to Izuku, that was nothing new. In his opinion, all girls were attractive. Everybody was lovely in their own unique way. Just thinking about SMS stuff in a book I read. I'm a rather avid reader myself. Care to share? He took a bite out of his lip. Well, it's an essay of quirk-related psychological phenomena and the argument of determinism. His mouth was clearing. It's not as dull as it sounds. Manga was too preoccupied on his comics to notice the name. Mineta gave a sneer. Ooh. Neared. By Hirohito Miyagi, isn't it? Why, you've read it. I have. Miyagi makes an interesting argument for the quirks overruling free will. Though, Midoriya-kun, Psycho's tone dropped. You do realize that Miyagi's works are rather controversial, especially because he was a well-known supporter of Destro and a suspected follower of one. Izuku gasped for air. Scratching his brow, Mineta asked, wait, what now? What's all this nerd talk? Why is pretty boy looking like you said you're into pegging? Psycho sighed on her end. Manga threw down his comic book and said, the followers of one. Surely even you should have heard of them. Psycho mumbled and two pairs of blank eyes gazed. What do they even teach in middle school these days? You make it sound like you're not a middle school student. For once, Mineta-san, you make a correct deduction. Mineta asked, her eyes widening, you're in high school. I've been talking to a high school girl all this while. I'm not in high school, Mineta-san. I'm completing my doctorate at a university which shall go unnamed because I do not trust you enough to know it. For a few minutes, there was silence around the table. Izuku never doubted people and never thought someone would be so brazen in their lies. To the best of his knowledge, Psycho had no motive to deceive them. Getting her doctorate finished. She must not be that much older than I am, given that she is now pursuing her PhD. That is. Izuku muttered, amazing. Wait, you actually believe her? I do. Arms crossed, Mineta said. There's no way that Izuku noticed his lips twitching and said, Mineta-san. His limbs moving. His right arm landed on the little boy's shoulders with gentleness. He was unable to frown or scowl, so he had to force a smile onto his lips. His hand muscles were tensing up and he knew exactly where to put the greatest force. I don't like it when people doubt others. I trust Psycho-san to be honest with us. If you don't believe her words, please keep your lack of belief to yourself. Please. Mineta murmured, his face twisted quickly, alright. Why your hand? Izuku gave a blink. He snatched his palm away from Mineta's shoulder, sounding as though he had been scorched. Sorry. He raised his own hand slowly and studied it, treating it as if it were an alien object. Though I hadn't intended to. Psycho cleared her throat. She gestured to concentrate just on manga, saying, thank you, Midoriya-kun, as unnecessary as it was. I care very little if others do not believe me. Regardless, to educate those who are not aware. The followers of one are a religious group. Or at least, they started out as one, but have increasingly become known worldwide as an S-ranked terrorist organization. Manga questioned, terrorists? Like villains? Not quite. Psycho retorted. Although finding concrete proof is difficult these days, a lot of journals and books of the past make mention of a person born in the age when quirks were fairly new, a person said to be able to give and take away quirks at will. He took away quirks from those who considered their powers a burden and blessed those who were in need of quirks to make their lives better. As human nature tends to glorify and objectify things that are unknown or mystical, this individual was treated in the same light as the luminescent baby. Worshipped. Glorified. In a world filled with chaos and uncertainty, the man with the power to alter the status quo was deified. Psycho tweaked her goggles. For the most part, he was simply referred to as the one. The one who all would bow before. The one who would change the world. The one who could either turn all of humanity into a supernatural society or turn back the hands of evolution and leave us as we once were. Whether or not the one is some messianic figure or not is irrelevant. The fact is that he possessed power and people flocked to him for it. His followers numbered in the millions, and thus, a religion formed behind him. Izuku muttered, the followers of one. I've never heard of them, Manga remarked. The government does its best to censor out news that includes activities of the followers. Psycho clarified. The one himself is somewhat of an urban legend now, despite there being sufficient evidence to prove that he was real. Some historians theorize that the one was killed in the first Quirk War that brought about the current status quo of heroes and villains. His followers scattered to the winds, searching desperately for a person worthy to succeed him. Nowadays, they mostly conduct shock and awe tactics of bombings and arson, but are also suspected of a long trail of unsolved kidnappings and missing people. The one's followers. Izuku would readily own that his only knowledge of them came from his eccentric days when he would spend hours searching the internet for any means of realizing his ambition. I kept reading, article after article, website after website, regarding the possibility of a quirk being acquired by someone who wasn't born with one. He perused message boards, delving into vile, incensed places frequented by individuals who shared his experiences, those who detested the quirky system because they felt destined to be without it. He's seen a lot of allusions to the followers at the time from his searches. There were still those who thought the one was alive. Alive but feeble, he waited for someone deserving to come before him so he might give that person his peculiarity the ability to accept and give. Izuku-kun. Ah why yes. Psycho had curled her fingers. You've read Miyagi's work. What did you think of it? How did he feel? Izuku forced himself not to bite his bottom lip. It's waving her hand, Psycho said, I know it's controversial. Especially the studies on subject Nevermore. Her mind filling us in. Izuku's eyes shifted from Psycho to Mineta and Manga, who appeared disoriented. He stammered out. There was a man, once a good man who was arrested for having committed mass murder of everyone at a pea poultry farm but well, in court, it was argued that it wasn't his fault because of his quirk. He had a quirk that allowed him to understand birds at a level better than he understood humans. His defense was that the corvids, ravens and crows approached him and told him that the birds were suffering, and they badgered him. And badgered him until he went there himself and well, the official report gotten from security camera footage said that he broke down in tears at the sight of the poultry, screaming why over and over again, and in blind grief, summoned an army of vultures and crows, and that feasted on all the humans, and let all the chickens go. Psycho was done. He was given the villain name Nevermore for his ability. He did not fight back or protest at his arrest. Nevermore said, to him, birds were people. Each bird was a person, with personality, charm, soul and character. He'd been an avid bird watcher and a docile office worker. Yet, in an instant, he became labeled an A-class villain and was sentenced to life in prison. Manga mumbled, whoa. That's. Damn. He had the backing of many fanatical animal rights activists who called him a hero, and the case brought a question as to whether or not he could truly be held accountable for his actions. His quirk, his ability to speak to and understand birds as he would humans, was the crux of the issue. The argument was, if you were to walk into a factory where humans were caged, treated in inhumane conditions and butchered as we butcher livestock, would you have done any differently from what Nevermore did? Psycho sighed. The argument is still relevant today. As is the question of the true limits of animal and even plant sapience. Of course, rather than bring these issues into light on the news, the government would rather shove down commercialized and propagandized images of heroes being a shining beacon for society down our throats. Izuku could not resist squirming, even a tiny bit. He continued to respect heroes. His desire to be a hero persisted. However, he questioned if, in his role as a hero, he could have done anything to benefit Nevermore. Pro-heroes were not permitted to engage in politics or the judicial system, but they were permitted to work as side jobs. It was their responsibility to apprehend the villain. Mitsuda walked up to the group and said, I'm back. So, before scowling. Why is everyone looking like someone died? Psycho responded, that would be on me. I find myself discussing a lot of sensitive macabre issues without realizing it. I have been told that my real superpower is the ability to end parties and deprive people of joy. That's not true. Psycho gave a tiny ghostly smile. I appreciate the support, Midoriya-kun. Truly, I do. But I am not obtuse enough to fail to recognize the emotional drain I tend to leave on people. It's easier and more enjoyable to keep one's head in the sunlight than to wade through darkness with a faltering torch. Sliding over her seat, Psycho stood up and slung her bag over her shoulder. It's getting rather late, Mitsuda-kun. Midoriya-kun. Manga-kun. Hey, what about me? Psycho turned to face everyone but him and gave Mineta a quick look before bowing courteously. I'll be taking my leave now. Thank you for entertaining me. Izuku felt a kick to his chest when he saw Psycho turn to go. Izuku believed time was moving more slowly as it was. Every second seemed to extend into many excruciating minutes. The wave of her hair when she pivoted. The crumpled mess on her attire. The force to move her bag was carried by the motion of her arm swinging. Midoriya Izuku felt something kick his chest once more, causing his body to start moving before his mind could react. Intelli-san. She spun around, leisurely adjusting hair strands behind her right ear that were pale gray. Once more, something punched Midoriya in the chest. Why you don't have to go, Izuku said, biting his lip. I truly enjoyed the last word caught him in his throat. Being there. He had something to say. Business. He was able to make use of. He had no idea which would be the correct answer. Whichever would be more fitting. Psycho put her palm under her chin and said, Midoriya-kun. It is getting late. I'm not leaving because I felt uncomfortable with ruining the atmosphere. I'm leaving because I have a lecture to attend tomorrow. Midoriya's cheeks burned. Can. You're capable of it. Izuku, you can do it. Nobody will believe in you if you don't, he blurted. See, can I have a phononimer? I mean if you so we can keep in touch, but if you don't you want to reconsidering my offer for a quirk marriage? Izuku had scorched cheeks. Maybe. It took him 0.002 seconds to comprehend the words he had spoken. He raised his brows to the crown of his skull. Psycho's eyebrows were also up. I mean, with a laugh, Psycho put her right hand over her mouth. She delved inside her bag and a sleek, expensive-looking phone emerged. It's fine, Midoriya-san. I was the one who started the teasing, it's only fair that I receive some as well. Midoriya carefully entered his contact information while holding it with steady fingers despite his heart racing 1,000 kilometers per hour. It's been a pleasure, Midoriya-kun. Also, thank you for the portrait. Only a few minutes had passed when Midoriya realized that Psycho had taken his number instead of giving it to him when she left the hero's jump. Once more, there was a strange kick in his chest. A strange foreign churning in his gut. Somehow, his feet felt lighter. Midoriya Izuku's face lit up inexplicably as the air filled with her deep lilac aroma. At that point, he realized there were 3 other people there. One of them had a big Cheshire cat smile on his face as she stared at him. Ho, said Mitsuda. Little Izuku-kun has his first crush. Izuku could feel the heat throughout his whole face. And no, it's not like that at all. Rolling her tongue, Mitsuda murmured, Anyway, ignoring Izuku's not crush on Psycho, who's ready for a good old-fashioned tabletop RPG. To be honest, Midoriya Izuku didn't really pay attention to what happened after Psycho went. Having been left on his own since he consistently rolled a natural 20, which made him a gamebreaker, he found himself thinking about Psycho and being drawn to both her intelligence and her critiques of the idealization and adoration of heroes. To the subject of the one's followers and their faith in a deserving heir. To Miyagi's studies and growing anxieties about himself. His dream was to be the kind of hero that stood by everyone. Who entered the ring alone and stood in the corner of them. However, being a government-controlled hero limited his capacity to do so. Not a single hero voiced support for Nevermore, nobody was on his side. Naturally, Nevermore committed murder and it was never right to kill because you would be harming other people. As truly being there for everyone. Impossible. He would upset people who had lost their families if he backed Nevermore. He would be opposed to Nevermore if he had stood by people who had lost their families. A man whose only transgression was to think of birds as humans. He was forced to choose a side. He needed to select a side. Put yourself in the middle of 2 hurt, mourning people. How on earth am I expected to make such a callous decision? It was the result of quirks. Peculiarities. That same power that changed his life was out there, ruining the lives of Mitsuda and Nevermore, among others. How might he help them? How could he make their lives more normal, cheerful, and fulfilled? He cast a silent glance in the direction of Mitsuda, who had assumed the role of dungeon master. Because he didn't want to bother people with his oddity, a person as intelligent and gifted as Mitsuda thought his only career option was to become an adult film star. It wasn't appropriate. I have to figure out how to fix it. The sole query was, how? The specific Remark Izuku has not kept any sort of time record. Izuku. Izuku-kun. Where have you been? I was worried. Waiting for him outside the door in her nightgown was his mother. Although he was already well past the current curriculum in his private studies, the fact that it was a school night meant less and less to him. He might sleep for as little as 4 or 5 hours and still wake up feeling completely rejuvenated. I was meeting up with some friends and I already called the Katsukas, and even though Bakugo tried to lie and claim you were sleeping over, Izuku looked up. What did Kaken do? Mitsuki overheard him and said you weren't there. Kaken isn't my only friend, Ka-san. Mid-tirade, his mother halted. Don't tell me it's that boy again. Izuku clenched his jaw. Stop referring to him like that. You don't even know him. He asks you to draw porn of your classmate. He has you come home by 11 p.m. on a school night. I don't need to know him to know that he's a bad influence, Izuku-kun. Izuku clenched his 2 fists into a fist. How is she able to? How could his mother, who was his own flesh and blood, be so different from him? She had never met this person, how could she judge them? Someone who was making a valiant effort to be a decent person. Someone who had everything stacked against them already. Furthermore, without even attempting to comprehend the circumstances or knowing anything about them. Stop it, he murmured. Stop it, Ka-san. Izuku-kun, please understand that I'm trying my best to look out for you. Making friends with someone like that, stop it. That was the highest he had ever lifted his voice. Elevated to the point where it reverberated across the quiet street. The impact caused the glass and windows to tremble. His mother moved softly to the side. Izuku muttered, stop. Judging people without knowing them. People are more than you. More than what you believe them to be. More than you could ever believe them to be. Izuku-kun, I always wondered, Ka-san, what would have happened if I never got my quirk, he stated. Would you have kept looking at me with those eyes? Those sad eyes? Those guilty eyes? For the rest of my life would you have kept looking at me, with pity and regret and sadness? Without even a shred of faith? He heard her tears. She was calling his name while her sluggish, agonized tears continued. Izuku, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. All I've ever wanted from you, Ka-san, was to believe in me. To believe in me just once. Just once, Ka-san. I just wanted you to believe. His vision was hazy. A dense mass was present in his throat. One that he was unable to figure out. How to retaliate by biting back. How to take a bite out of anything. His heart was racing. Too soon. He was unsure of how to respond to it. It stung, and he didn't enjoy it. It aches. It aches. He yearned for the pain to subside from his chest. The agony has vanished. His mother's tears streaming down her face as he begged, can I be a hero? Midoriya Izuku tried to find the most effective approach to make it stop hurting. For his tender heart to cease to hurt. And at that same moment, his oddity responded. His attachment to and love for his mother was the source of his emotional suffering. He was offended and disappointed by her lack of trust in him. It took precision to cut off the source of the pain in order to cease the suffering. To take away the pain of his mother's lack of faith in him. And yet, because the anguish was linked to his love, it could not be eliminated, not even with extreme surgical precision. His suffering grew worse the more he loved his mother. There was just one regrettable option left. Izuku. Midoriya hoisted his bag over his shoulder. I'm sorry, too, Ka-san. Izuku-kun. Izuku. Where are you going, Izuku? I tried, Ka-san. I tried my best. Izuku-kun. Izuku-kun, please come back. Come back. He didn't turn around. He was unable to turn back. Izuku-kun, please. I love you, Izuku-kun. Mommy loves you. Please don't go. With only his clothing on and a rucksack slung across his arm, Midoriya Izuku disappeared into the night, leaving behind the silent, soft footsteps that resonated through the darkness, along with the unheard screams and pleas of a contrite mother. They had an illness. They were all infected. The kids, their eyes raised in astonishment at the ludicrous falsehoods propagated by the mainstream media, strolling down the streets. The parents who condoned the lies and continued to spread the illness by word alone, showing little regard for the uninfected. And in the latest popularity poll, All Might remains the #1 ill. It stung. He turned his back on the crowd that was moving and the advertising. They parted as he walked, making room for him. Irony prevailed. The sick staying away from the healthy. He didn't really care. He had time on his side. The one who ruled was still here, so he would wait patiently. The underworld's king. Most likely the sickest of all of them. A man who, perhaps out of fun or indifference, chose to hide the vaccination. He had the ability to cure Hero Society's ailment from the public. It was not really important. The king's reign will not last forever. Although he was not a fan of regicide, he would not hesitate to do it if it came to it. Others who tried to control the light were far weaker than others who had turned the darkness into a paradise. The light was aware of this. This was what frightened them. That is why they battled to make sure that those in the dark never came together as one, like panicked bees buzzing in the chaos of their shattered colony. The supermarket doors opened and the clerk bowed her head reverently as usual. Respect and understanding were present. The understanding of the world's previous customs prior to the illness known as quirks, upending the natural order. There was a buzz on his phone. He didn't have to grab it. Not with it already inside of him. A portion of him. Speak. It was the voice on the other end saying, "It's your favorite broker speaking. How's Japan's most feared Yakuza boss doing?" "I don't have time for your jokes, Jiren. It's always been so serious," groaned the broker. "And to think people said you'd mellow out after adopting a daughter. How's little Eri-chan doing? I heard she's head over heels for you." He remained silent. Such a response was uncalled for. "And where did you hear that?" "Tut. Tut. Come on, Chisaki. You know how this song and dance goes. Don't test me." The broker chuckled and said, "Ooh. You gonna send Nemoto after me to make me spill my guts? You know, your man's been making a hell of a reputation for himself. Know what they're calling him?" "I don't care." "Azrael," the broker murmured. "Means the angel of death. Funny, considering Nemoto doesn't even kill his victims, he just makes them spill their secrets. Though I suppose for those tight-lipped and cautious government and company types, spilling their guts out is pretty much guaranteeing their death. What do you want, Jiren?" "Well, as it stands some bastards are getting close on my tail. Time to switch things up." At a different look. It was noteworthy. "The pro-heroes are closing in on you?" Jiren laughed so loudly that it nearly infuriated him. "Ha. As if. The heroes are as oblivious as ever. Too self-righteous to ever do the deeds needed to get in touch with me. No, I'm talking about another group. A more troublesome group. You should have heard of them. Their leader is Destro's son, he calls himself Re-Destro. Another group of the diseased. I know them. The Metal Liberation Army. As expected of the youngest Yakuza boss in Japan. Always up to trend with potential contenders. What do they want with you? What don't they want with me? I'm Jiren. Once upon a time I'd brag about how I'm the underworld's greatest broker, but it's actually pretty annoying now that everyone knows it. I'm the dame at the ball in the short dress and everyone's eager to take my hand and dance." He said something under his breath. "Have you decided on the look?" "A girl. 18 or so. She's a cute one too. Orphaned from hero parents, no real friends or family, zero records in the system, and a quirk that lets her enter people's dreams. She's perfect. Aren't you perfect, darling?" Frantic whimpers and sobs filled his ears. "Yeah. She's perfect. Plus, no one ever suspects cute girls. It's why that serial killer chick manages to escape the law every time. I'd have gone for her, cause her quirk lets her transform into other people, but it needs blood to do that, and I'd rather not catch something from drinking people's blood. God only knows what kind of shit is inside Stain's system." A pause occurred. "Speaking of viruses, no, Jiren. Come on, Chisaki. You were making a fortune. We were making a fortune. Money isn't a concern of mine any longer. But you could always make more. The Americans loved your stuff. It's not like it costs you anything. Just grab a common pneumococcus bacterium, get a petri dish of some obscure African virus, slap them together with your quirk, and upgrade the lethality and viola. Instant bioweapon. $100 million for a couple of minutes of work." "Jiren, the more you speak, the less sure I am that I won't kill you when we meet." Fine, no more creating extinction-level viruses. "I get it. Now you're all about that trigger drug and, of course, your magnum opus." He stroked his nose slowly with his thumb and index finger. "Jiren, I understand. You know my secrets. You have the means to leak them to the world. I'm not a fool. I don't have time for these games. Once you're ready for my services, call me." "Tut tut. That's so not fair, Chisaki. You're making me out to be the bad guy here, dangling your juicy secrets in front of you." The broker laughed. "To make things a bit fair, I'll give you some interesting information I picked up. Free of charge. What's the catch?" "I like to call it a down payment of good faith." Jiren replied. "Now, do you want to hear it or not?" "Go on." "It appears to me that the P symbol is nearing the end of his life. If he presses it, the Kingdom of Light may lose its monarch in 2 years or less." Chisaki came to an end. His eyes fell upon the well-stocked store shelves, with chilly air rising from the refrigerators holding milk and yogurt. "Where did you get this info?" "Chisaki, I'm a very giving man, but if I told everyone where I received my knowledge, I'd look like a creepy information broker. In any case, you can always send your angel of death to verify if you don't trust me. His confessional quirk is the best way to spot lies. Sending him to corner Chiyoshu Zenji and getting the truth from her is all that is required. An old woman. She's more commonly known as Recovery Girl. The Light's healer. Exactly. A national treasure. Of course, she's the only real healer the Light have, so she's extremely well protected. About a dozen assassins try their luck to end her every month, but because the old bat lives at UA and the demon Nizumi has marked that place as his kingdom, all who have tried have been caught and incarcerated." No one has broken into UA since its founding, but you're Kai Chisaki. If anyone could succeed, it just might be you. I have no interest in schoolchildren. Says the man who spends several hours every day in a dark room with a little girl strapped down. Chisaki cautioned Jiren. Oh come on, where's your sense of humor? Ah, whatever. I've told you my piece. Chisaki stated, you're hiding something. You wouldn't tell me to send Nemoto after Recovery Girl if you didn't believe it was possible. You wouldn't suggest attacking UA either. Jiren, what is your real intention? My sources tell me All Might will be taking a teaching job at UA in the coming year. And taking a teaching job. Just as his time in the sun is about to expire. Come on. Even Chinese martial art films aren't that obvious. He's in search of a successor. We all know Endeavor can't be the symbol of peace. He's covered his tracks well, but all it'd take would be to point out why his wife is confined to a psychiatric ward to make his wax wings melt. Hawks is strong, but he doesn't have the same presence. Best Jeanist and Ryukyu aren't in the same punching class. So, that leaves finding someone young and moldable. A new player. I see. You've given a lot of thought to this. I'll ask again, what is your goal, Jiren? Tell me, Chisaki, do you watch pro wrestling? No. I do. I love it. The athletes are well trained, and of course, I know they don't actually try to hurt each other, but the performances are still spectacular. Many hate it because they say it's fake. They miss the point. It never advertised itself as something real. The wrestlers are playing a role, their characters, and the way they interact with the other wrestlers, the other characters, it's a beautiful performance. The ways a character can turn from face to heel or heel to face, or reach a famed gold status, wherein they are never booed and always loved, regardless of whatever they say or do. I love all of it. I assume there's a point, somewhere in there. The entire system of villains and heroes is just like pro wrestling. But it's real. The stakes are real. The consequences. Real. Yet for the past several years, things have been at a stalemate. A boring equilibrium. Rarely do we hear of villains turning into heroes, and far, far more rarely do we hear of heroes turning into villains. Then there is the most famed impossibility, a person who is neither hero nor villain yet, the masses arise as one, and they cheer. They chant and celebrate such a person can't exist. I know. That is why I will do everything in my power to make the next best thing. And that would be. You'll know it when you see it, Chisaki. You'll understand only when you see it. Seldom did the renowned underworld broker divulge his actual objectives to anyone. Everyone was aware that he had an excessive amount of wealth and wasn't pursuing it. He had no desire for power because the man had numerous opportunities to get it but declined them. However, Chisaki could never have predicted that Jiren's decision to be Jiren was motivated by anything like this. Like the rest of them, he is sick. Well, I've taken up far too much of your time already. You'll find me at Warehouse 9 in the Camino Red Zone. It's been a pleasure as always. The call ended. Chisaki Kai picked at the lumps on his hand's back. Ill. Similar to everyone else. A detailed remark, you're fucked in the head, Izuku. It's just for a little while. Bakugo Katsuki growled. A chilly night breeze came in through the window, sending explosions rocketing off his palms. It was probably only the moron hanging from his window, looking like he'd given his puppy 1,000 kicks, who could have agitated him to such an extent. No. Kaken, he said, go home, Izuku. Don't be a fucking idiot. You think UA is gonna let a fucking runaway apply to their school? I don't give a shit about what problems you and your mum have, work it out. Izuku gritted his teeth, I can't. You don't understand, Kaken. I can't. I can't stand to look at her. All I see when I look at her is those moments. Those moments when she looked at me as if I had no hope. As if Katsuki. Bakugo hissed, it's fucking 2 in the middle of the night, Izuku. Deal. With. Your. Shit. I'm not going back there. Bakugo couldn't take this. So, what, you're just gonna leave your mum to hang and dry, wondering where the fuck you are? Bakugo asked. What happened to all that bullshit about always being in someone's corner? Not letting anyone feel fucking alone? What, it only applies to strangers and not your own goddamn family. It's different. How the fuck is it different? Izuku's teeth gritted against each other as he said, I could accept it from you, or from some stranger, or from anyone else but her. And when I got my quirk, she tried to act as if all the years behind us hadn't happened. She was so relieved as if she'd done something right. As if it made up for it. What the fuck are you on about? It's like you had no faith that your crippled child would ever accomplish his dreams because he was crippled. But one day a miracle happens and he can walk again. He can walk again. And all of a sudden you expect him to just throw his arms around you? Just like that. He's supposed to just forget. Bakugo was at a loss for words. He was worn out. Tired. Easily agitated. However, he was also aware of Izuku's irksome stubbornness. Izuku's stubbornness was not as obvious as his was. It was a secret aspect of who he was. It was hard to get him to believe anything else once he set his mind to something, committed to anything, or formed an opinion. Well, Katsuki knew. Other people might have given up and chosen a different dream after hearing the same words of scorn and discouragement. They wouldn't turn away from any and all options in order to obstinately pursue a single objective, ideal, or desire. Who knows what may have occurred if the boy hadn't developed any peculiarities. Katsuki did not want to consider the bleak scenarios of what someone would have done if they had known that their dream was unattainable after acting in such extreme desperation and passion. I just need a place to stay for tonight. Just one night and then I'll find my own place. I'll get myself in order. You don't have any fucking money. I'll raise money. My quirk. It's good for that. I'll think of something. Itsuki Bakugo detested difficult circumstances. Family turmoil was something he detested. He was content with his family's current makeup. His mother was direct and concise. Though he was a softie, his father was incapable of keeping a secret or telling a falsehood to save his own life. Drama like this occurred because of secrets, deceit, and pent-up emotions that you never let out but instead let to build up. One fucking night. That's all I need, Kaken. One night and you and your mum deal with your shit. I can't. If you can't even do that, then don't ever fucking talk to me about wanting to be a hero that saves everyone. That'll just be you being a bullshitting hypocrite. He did not wait for the boy to answer. Bakugo turned around and fully opened the window. I'll get the spare Futen. Make too much noise and you're dead. Thanks, Kaken. Whatever. Meow. When Izuku's rucksack began to make gentle rustling noises, the two lads turned to face each other. The boy with green hair became aware of it and his eyes grew wide. Ah. Sir Kuro. Katsuki furrowed her brow. The cat. The black cat climbed out of the sack and spread its legs and body. Katsuki could feel his annoyance mounting with every moment that went by. Why the fuck is Shinigami in your bag? I picked him up from the park. I forgot he was in there. So, what, I'm getting 2 fucking freeloaders for the price of 1. I didn't ask for this shitty deal. Come on, Kaken. Sir Kuro will be on his best behavior. He won't cause any trouble. Will you, Sir Kuro? Meow. Katsuki Bakugo noticed that his eyebrow was furrowing even more. The poor, wretched cat tried to look innocent and cute by spreading its paws across the room, but nevertheless it managed to read the room. Bakugo was not a simpleton. It didn't take long for him to reject it. If I wake up to find you in my bed, I'll murder you. Izuku scowled. I wouldn't. I wasn't talking to you, Izuku. Meow. That's right. I'll fucking murder you. A specific remark. Izuku Midoriya was unable to sleep. Every idea that entered his head was more chaotic than the last, both before and after it. He was aware that, for the most part, Kaken was correct. Background checks were conducted on students at UA. He would need the agreement of his parents in order to follow his dream of being a hero and enrolling at UA. However, is enrolling in UA the best option? It is, of course. This is my ideal situation. It was true that he could enter UA and become a hero. For a long time, that was his dream, his aim. How come it feels that way now? Maybe because he was opening other doors at this point. Other options that hadn't occurred to him. With his peculiarity, Psycho herself informed him he could become a surgeon or an inventor. Putting it to use in more modest but meaningful ways to assist others. Maybe if he invented a gadget that made it simpler for people with annoying eccentricities to deal with their peculiarities, he could solve problems. This can't be the only thing that has occurred to me to consider. It seemed improbable. It is impossible to think about. There was a chance that nobody else in the world had considered attempting to assist those with problematic eccentricities. Schools provided guidance coaching on how pupils should utilize their peculiarities in a respectable manner, and the government outlawed the use of quirks in public or official settings, punishing offenders with steep fines and lengthy prison terms. Hero academies were the only establishments worldwide that taught students how to effectively manage their peculiarities and furnished them with tools and supplies to optimize their advantages and minimize their disadvantages. However, pro-heroes were essentially public workers and because of their position within the system, they were powerless to preserve it. When they were a part of it, they were unable to alter it. His phone rang and flashed a bright light in Kaken's dark room. Midoriya examined his phone and saw that there was a fresh message from an unknown number. His eyes adjusted instantly. Salutations, Midoriya-kun. Midoriya. Hey, hi. Midoriya. Apologies, but who's this? Tell me, Midoriya-kun. What are your thoughts on today's conversation? Their conversation. Izuku wrinkled his nose. He only spoke with one person about it. Midoriya. Are you smart? Midoriya-kun, Psycho-san is doing fine. Midoriya's face was suddenly hot. It dawned on him that she had taken his phone number. Psycho. I'll be honest with you, Midoriya-kun. I think you may be really helpful to me. Midoriya. Make use of. Midoriya scowled. Midoriya. Do you mean the offer for a quirk marriage? Psycho. Well, that's one approach, but no, I'm talking about another. Psycho. Midoriya-kun, I'm going to mail you a book. I would like you to read it and, when you're done, let me know what you think. File. Meta Liberation War Psycho. It sounded like a book that Psycho had sent him. The Karyatsubashi autobiography, The Meta Liberation War. Izuku was certain he had heard the name previously. Where exactly he was not quite sure. Midoriya. Alright. I'll peruse it. Psycho. Midoriya-kun, excellent. Psycho. Additionally, Midoriya-kun, I believe it would be best if you attempted to make amends with your mother for the time being. Izuku's heart went cold. Good night, Midoriya-kun, says Psycho. How did you find out, Midoriya? He held off. Seconds. Minutes. He finally came to the painful realization that Psycho would not respond to him as time went on. Midoriya looked at the phone in his fingers, his lips pressed close together. How was she aware of this? That was strange. Even disturbing. Izuku refused to let it perish. He was not going to let the matter end there. He quickly launched his browser, clicked on the search engine, and typed in IntelliPsycho. 4 million results. Quirkipedia, the free encyclopedia IntelliPsycho. Officially, Intelli Corporation and Detenrit Company emerge Business Insider. Science Today. An intelligence-based quirk company aims to reignite interest in space exploration. After becoming the 6th-ranked national chess champion, Intelli Eris ignited a discussion regarding the exclusion of intelligence quirk users from FIDE sanctioned events. Izuku gazed at the outcomes, his eyes enlarging with every one. The girl had declared herself to be brilliant, but she had made no mention of fame. Izuku chose the first choice that appeared, taking him to her Quirkipedia biography. Should I, he paused. Was it incorrect to discover Psycho's background in this way via the internet? Wouldn't it be preferable if he got to know her for herself instead of what other people thought of her? However, how was she aware of my altercation with Kasan? She was intelligent, and her quirk increased her intelligence, but it didn't make her omniscient, did it? No, there has to be a more straightforward and credible explanation than the idea that people's peculiarities endow them with clairvoyance. Still, some people have peculiarities related to clairvoyance. Sir Night-Eye, the former sidekick of All Might, possesses a strange ability that allows him to see into the future. Could Psycho's IQ quirk enable her to achieve something akin to that by consistently raising her IQ? I can't say for sure what it's like to be someone with a 4-digit IQ, but she never indicated if it was possible to stack her quirk and multiply her IQ by drinking different cups of tea or several cups in one session. Izuku had no idea what it would be like to be that intelligent. To possess the right solutions for any issue. Should be able to quickly construct and conceive of solutions for any problem that comes your way. He was even at a loss as to how Psycho came to know what she did. He was unable to come up with a plan to assist Mitsuda with his oddity. Couldn't come up with a way to help everyone who was suffering because they lacked or had a choice and an ability. The one thing he had ever wanted to be since he was a child, and he couldn't even decide if it was the correct thing to do or how to go about achieving his goals. When a hero was unable to save the people who needed saving the most, what good was it? When, in the end, he would have to make a decision, draw a line, select a side, and instead of stopping the bad guys, he would become happy to just limit their damage, smugly patting himself on the back for being a hero, and content to let one person suffer as long as no one else suffered alongside them. So, what, you're just gonna leave your mum to hang and dry, wondering where the fuck you are? A nasty taste filled Izuku's lips. Kaken's remarks came as a shock. If you can't even do that, then don't ever fucking talk to me about wanting to be a hero that saves everyone. That'll just be you being a bullshitting hypocrite. His teeth were gritted together. He was talking and thinking about protecting everyone in the baddies, but what had he actually done? He was incapable of even forgiving his own mother for her transgressions. Was he to think that the loved ones and families of people harmed by villains would pardon a complete stranger? Was he expected to have the space in his heart to encourage others in their goals and accept them for who they were, even when he couldn't even do that for his own family members? Why? Izuku clenched his jaw. Why am I still the way I am? Now he developed a quirk. Now he was in control. He had changed. His dreams shouldn't have seemed so unattainable to him. I still feel so insignificant. So frail. It seemed as though he was still clinging to hope. As though he was still pursuing an unattainable goal. No. It's not a peculiarity of mine. His eccentricity wasn't the problem. It was quite the quirk. If a scientist or doctor had found it, his peculiarity would have been revolutionary. However, he didn't picture himself going into medicine or science. That was the issue there. The issue was with him. He wanted to be a hero in the end, but he wanted to do it his way. That was not what a true hero did, that was his own self-centered style. It was him, not his dream or his eccentricity, that was the issue. To pursue his idea and see it through to completion, he lacked the necessary mindset, skill set, ruthlessness, confidence, and determination. Most people would stop at nothing to make their dreams come true, but despite his lack of eccentricity, all he had done was mope, sit around, desperately search the internet, and tell himself that he would somehow still end up a hero. Not anymore. That was Midoriya Izuku's decision. Not anymore. I have to be prepared to go above and beyond. Izuku Midoriya closed his eyes. He desired to exude confidence. His goal was to be intelligent. He desired to be free of uncertainties and fears. His desire was to have a heart large enough to accommodate everyone. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes tightly. Since the quirk known as precision was controlled by its owner, significant changes had to be done to the only organ in the world that had direct influence over a person's identity in order to alter their personality, remove doubt, and promote greater neuroplasticity. He applied the anatomy knowledge he had been learning for several months. Handling his quirk, feeling for it, Midoriya Izuku gave it instructions to alter his own shape, much like he would have given a computer instructions to complete a task. Hypothalamus, which regulates the endocrine system and maintenance processes. Exact. The medulla regulates respiration and heart rate. Exact. Cerebellum, which regulates voluntary motion and equilibrium. Exact. Amygdala, which influences feelings. Exact. Memory affecting hippocampal region. Exact. Whatever is necessary. Professor Miyazaki scribbled the quirk existence threat analysis on the whiteboard, commonly referred to as the QETA score. The system that enables us to rank quirks based on their potential ability to disrupt the global economy, change or alter the nature of human existence, or bring about the extinction of all life on the planet. With strands of his aging silver hair cascading down his face, the professor adjusted his spectacles. Certain individuals, such as the pro-hero 13 and the villain Quasar, possess extremely volatile quirks that, if used improperly, could lead to widespread devastation of lives, property, infrastructure. Others, such as the villain brother duo Goldfinger and Silvertooth, were capable of single-handedly causing the crash of the gold market. The professor grabbed his chalk and wrote the QETA rankings on the board. D rank. QETA 1, minimal, insignificant effects on the economy, society, and/or existence of humans. C rank. QETA 2, moderately perceptible effects on the economy, society, and/or way of life for humans. B rank. QETA 3, notable effects on the economy, society, or existence of humans. A rank. QETA 4, severe effects on the economy, society, and/or existence of humans. Impacts that are irreversible on the economy, society, and/or existence of humans. QETA 5. Professor Miyazaki adjusted his spectacles and dropped the chalk. Any individual discovered to possess a quirk of QETA 3 or higher will be closely observed by the government and, in some severe cases, as it was with Quasar's son, Supernova, deemed too dangerous to allow in human society. The lecturer reached over to touch his desk. Kubo et al. Argued in the quirk factor. Man's extinction by man's evolution about the ethicality of imprisoning individuals merely on the possibility of them utilizing their quirk to upheave society. Should we, as a society, continue to deprive individuals of their lives and freedom if it means guaranteeing the safety of our existence? They condemn innocent men, women and children to incarceration because of what they might do. A bell's ringing boom splintered through the classroom. We will be discussing the argument in our next lecture. Class dismissed. She zipped her books into her purse and gave a quiet controlled yawn. She strode through the lecture hall, managing to intercept the professor as he was wrapping up his belongings. Intelli-san. The monotone voice murmured. I take it you have some questions. My grade on the last assignment. I believe there must have been some error. She grabbed the paper and held it out for the professor to look over. There's no error here. This is an A-. Your highest grade in my class so far. You should be proud. I would rather you refrain from telling me what I should or should not feel, professor, and instead explain why you deemed my paper unworthy of a perfect grade. Miyazaki, the professor, shook his head. Intelli-san, you're my youngest student, the relevance of which being. You still have room to grow. Depriving me of my well-earned score without reason is meant for me to grow. Will you let me finish? The atmosphere seemed tense in a strange, impatient way. The older man mumbled something sharp under his breath. He looked at the board after clearing the mucus from his throat. Intelli-san, logic and rational thinking are excellent for several fields, but this the ethics and philosophy of quirks. A lot of your answers in my class are frankly, disturbingly unethical. They are unapologetically utilitarian in some instances and border on fanatically Machiavellian in others. I tackle the problems presented with suitable solutions, Professor. Professor Miyazaki pointed to the board and said, and I'm telling you that your solutions lack a shred of human empathy. In the case of subject Supernova, the prepubescent son of the villain Quasar, whose quirk allowed him to create and detonate miniature stars. What would you argue as being the right thing to do rather than incarceration? Sedate and use him as a source of free energy. Acquire his sperm and impregnate women with complementary quirks and use these individuals as vehicles to advance human civilization. Did you miss where I stated that the boy is barely old enough to have started puberty? What is the life of one boy compared to the eventual prosperity of billions? And you wonder why you have an A- in my class. As she watched the professor leave the lecture hall, her lips were squeezed close together. She followed him with unwavering determination. Professor, I'm not quite sure I understand. Your reason for not giving me a perfect grade is because my arguments in your class are lacking in emotional predilections and unnecessary sentiment. Sentiment? Is that what you believe it is, to not exploit a child for the gain of others? Yes, Psycho replied. What else could it be? Miyazaki, the professor, sighed. He grew older, at least 3 times faster than before. With his right hand, he reached into his pocket and something appeared in his fingers, a cigarette. A lighter came next, not too long after. When the well-known cancer-causing stick landed in his mouth, all he could do was take a long, slow puff of smoke. I have another class, Intelli-san. As he went, the man ran out of things to say to her. She became even more convinced that the professor was simply another person giving lip service to the alleged goodness that exists in all people when he failed to respond to her. Although altruism is an essential evolutionary trait of society, it did not mean denying oneself benefits because of ideas about what one thought was right or good. Her phone twice beeped. She reached into her bag, took out the device, and read a message within. Midoriya. I've got it worked out. Psycho hero. Her brow furrowed. Psycho. Deciphered what? Midoriya. I installed the backdoor app on my phone. Midoriya. Please enter your number when I hand you my phone. You set up a backdoor application. That's how my discussion was intercepted by you. You found out that my mum and I had a fight because of that. She pursed her lips as she considered her answer. Psycho. That's correct. Psycho. You amaze me. Midoriya. That makes me happy. She gave a blink. Psycho. Are you okay? Midoriya. Do I have to be? Psycho. Most people would view what I did as a flagrant violation of their privacy. Midoriya. That was the case. Psycho. You're not angry about that fact, then? Midoriya. I've never had spyware installed on my phone so that someone could snoop on me. I think I'm flattered. Said the boy, flattered. Midoriya. Well, I suppose I could take action and we could declare it even if you think I ought to be offended. Her lips were squeezed tight together. Is this Midoriya that I'm speaking with? Psycho. What kind of idea do you have? Midoriya. I'll have an idea. Midoriya. Ah, now that I think about it, I did finish the book you sent me. Midoriya. What other suggestions do you have? Psycho. Sending file. The Quirk Factor. Evolutionary man's extermination of mankind. Midoriya. I'm grateful, Psycho-san. Psycho. How did you feel about the book by Yatsuhashi? Midoriya. It provokes thought. Psycho. Have you had any specific thoughts provoked? Midoriya. Numerous. His behavior was evasive. Midoriya. During lunch, we may talk about it. That is, assuming you're not too busy, Midoriya. Her knowledge of pragmatics and semantics informed her that Midoriya might have been attempting to establish a social relationship by using the discuss it over lunch card, or he could have just been making a simple request to talk about a book. Psycho. I think I have time to clear my schedule. Midoriya. How wonderful. Midoriya. The address will be texted to you. Midoriya. I hope your classes go well. Please accept my best wishes to Professor Miyazaki. She gazed at her phone's last message. Her eyebrows flew up at once. She made sure. She laughed out loud. A big smile was on Midoriya's face as she looked over her contact list. Instead of connecting her to Midoriya's front camera, her specialized app simply displayed a picture of herself wearing her college graduation gown. A specific remark, there was blue sky. More blue than blue. The word was sky blue. The azure heavens were breathtaking. Perched on a rooftop, with his legs hanging loosely to the sides, his phone was next to him, idly streaming Intelli Psycho's university lecture in real time. He reached into a bag of chips with his right hand. Salted. His fingertips fluttered the stuff inside. They located the correct one. Fluid. He snatched it up with his middle and index fingers. They hurled it skyward. It caught in his teeth. Not a crunch. Not a break. He placed the chip aside in a tidy pile. Breathed in the fresh morning air. Carbon dioxide exhaled. Breathed in and out once again. Be content. Just 2 words. A mental directive. A directive that he gave himself. His body responded immediately. His thoughts responded right away. In one instant, dopamine and serotonin shot into his system. His mouth formed a lovely smile. His gaze brightened. Feelings of giddiness coursed through his body. He gave a big belly laugh and threw back his head. Any negativity that tried to creep in was thrown aside by self-provided satisfaction. Any doubts about the sanctity of whether or not he was right to give himself such a precise degree of control over his own feelings. I am here. He laughed as his voice echoed through the wind and screamed at the top of his lungs. His blood pounded in his veins and his heartbeat pounded in his ears, all while he felt a rush of satisfaction at having complete control over his own endocrine system. Oi. Izuku. What the fuck are you doing on the roof? Beneath him materialized a scowling visage and a mess of blonde hair. There was nothing Kaken's nasty face could do to cheer him up. Izuku couldn't resist the beaming smile that spread across his face. Morning Kaken. Get the fuck off my roof. He laughed again and pivoted his body. A leap of faith, like they often did in that assassin gaming franchise. A backflip, a spin, all of his limbs pressed up against the window as he grabbed on with deft fingertips. Kaken glared at him as she stumbled back from the surprise landing. What's got you in such a good fucking mood? He laughed, nothing. Is it weird, being happy for no reason? You really have to ask something that stupid. I think it's weird, instead, that we need a reason to be happy. You on something? On. Kaken said, drugs. You fucking usin. Izuku chuckled. I don't need drugs Kaken. That wasn't a fucking no. No Kaken. So, the reason you look like you just got your balls softly fondled, how would you know what someone who got their balls fondled looks like? I wasn't being fucking literal. Izuku smiled and raised both hands. He laughed, I didn't say you were. He chuckled, just a funny thought. Izuku couldn't help but chuckle as he said, fondled. Fondling. Fuck. It's too fucking early for this shit. Hey, Kaken, were you using your Kwai? His body moved all the time. Moving before he was hit by the blast. He burst out laughing as he leaped backwards off the Kitsuki's window in a flawless fluid motion. Perfectly landing, he raised his hands into the air and mimicked the way Olympic gymnasts bow to the judges. Again, his body whirled in response to instinct, grabbing hold of the rucksack that was hurled in his direction. As he looked up at the window, his bag fell into his outstretched hand and he saw Kitsuki Bakugo's frowning visage and extended middle finger. Get your fucking shit together. All that did was make Midoriya grin. You're not going to throw out Sir Kuro too. The cat isn't the one that's acting fucked in the head. You can just say you like cuddling him. I won't judge you Kaken. Midoriya Izuku laughed as the middle finger was raised for a considerable amount of time. A specific remark he was present. Positioned in the kitchen area. Her nose were penetrated by the scent of eggs that came from the kitchen. She gave herself a pinch. For added precaution, she gave herself a second, more severe pinch. There he stood, in the kitchen, his hair pulled back into a tidy ponytail behind him. Plus, he had an Ultra Chef apron around his waist. She was humming and dancing to a song she had heard but couldn't quite place. Izuku. Good morning Ka-chan. A dazzling grin with brilliant teeth astounded her. Izuku. Sounded a little shaky. Is it really you? Come on Kaken, I made breakfast. He came up to her, putting a gentle touch on her hands before guiding her into the dining room. She sat there, confused and dazed, her heart pounding and squeezing inside her chest. A dish of bacon and eggs was in front of her, grinning at her. Izuku leaned over and planted a kiss on her right cheek as a glass of orange juice gently rested next to her. Izuku, I've got to hurry or I'll be late for school. School. He wore the uniform of his school. Cool. Pressed into shape. Izuku, about last night? Last night, the boy said with an odd scratch to the back of his head. Sorry about last night Ka-chan. I wasn't really thinking things through and acted like a really spoiled brat. He bowed. I said some really hurtful things, and I'm sorry. Her son's head was bent, properly expressing regret. Her lips pressed together again in silence as her mouth opened and her dry breath escaped. It's fine. Izuku raised his head. He gave her a smile. Smiled down at her. She felt her chest constrict. His smile spread like wildfire. I'm going to make things up to you. Midoriya moved a piece of paper under her tray and slid it across the table. She lifted it up with unsteady fingers. Confusion replaced trepidation. A flyer. The flyer said. Mother-son and father-daughter yoga classes are now being offered at Ultra Fitness Gym. Giving her another flyer, he said, Rockin' Music Stores. Music classes at a family discount. Bring a family member and enjoy amazing deals. Izuku, I don't understand. And now for the third flyer. Oba-chan's Bakeries. The finest baking is done with family. There are discounts available. She set the flyer down. What's this about? Ways for us to spend some more time together. Spend more time? The boy gave his chin a scratch. San, I realized for years I've always known what my dream was and what I wanted to be. But I've never known what dreams you have. And what you want to be. And I realized I never cared to ask. His eyes gleamed. What brought this on? The young man shrugged. I did some thinking, Ka-chan. Organized my thoughts. I realize now what's really important. What's really important? Izuku circumnavigated the table. Her son approached her from behind while she was seated and placed his hands gently on her shoulders. Immediately, the weight of the world lifted off her shoulders. She felt the ache disappear from her muscles and the stiffness from her joints, as if some unseen deity had come and, with a touch of a button, cleansed her of all physical stress. She could not recall how relaxed her body had ever been. It was the most at ease she had felt in years. Her son said, "Your dreams, Ka-chan. Tell me your dreams." It was as though she were floating. Devoid of weight. On a meandering gentle cloud. Like ice cubes melting on beach sand, her concerns melted. She felt 10 years younger just by feeling Izuku's gentle angelic hands caress her shoulders. "My dreams," she started. I was never the office type or the ambitious type. My quirk wasn't suited for heroics, but it was amazing at awing children. I remember, before you were born, when I worked at a creche. When the children got noisy or loud or couldn't sleep, I would hide and use my quirk on their toys, and I would make voices and they would all go quiet and stare, oohing and awing. She chuckled. Some of them went on to tell their parents that their toys came to life. It wasn't much, but I enjoyed that, watching the happiness in young children attracting toys around them and seeing the wonder in their eyes, and it made me love that. It made me want that. All I ever wanted was to have a family like that, with happiness in the eyes of the children, with happiness in everyone. So I'd hurt a lot more when you didn't get your quirk, and I felt I'd failed. The one thing I wanted was to have a happy family, and yet I couldn't even give my own son happiness. Izuku wrapped her arms carefully around her. "It's fine, Ka-chan. You didn't fail." With a beautiful smile on his face, he knelt beside her. "You didn't fail." Izuku, her son, grinned more. "So, does that mean you want tons and tons smiling grandchildren?" "Oh, Izuku," Inko said as she wiped away a tear. "You're a bit too young for that right now. I just want you to pursue your dreams first. Finish school. Become the hero you've always wanted to be. Shine brightly and you'll make your mother the happiest mother in the world." Midoriya Izuku smiled with his brilliant teeth, giving a fictitious salute of attention. "Yes, ma'am." "Oh, come of it. As you wish, ma'am." As Izuku pretended to be a soldier, Inko chuckled. His right hand was positioned over his chest. "Midoriya Izuku will accomplish that dream. Whatever it takes." As he declared his intentions, his eyes gleamed. "Whatever it takes." "Boo. Thank you so much, Midoriya-kun. I don't know what I'd have done without my notebook." Midoriya grinned and said, "You're welcome." "Thank you, Midoriya-kun." Midoriya bowed and said, "You're welcome." "Midoriya-kun. I saw your All Might drawings in my classroom. You're awesome." Midoriya-kun found my missing pen. Isn't he thoughtful? Midoriya-kun, could I get your help? Midoriya-kun. Midoriya-kun. With one eye twitching, Kitsuki Bakugo gazed at the astounding shift in the dynamics of the class. The class's female members gathered around Midoriya as though he were the Buddha, offering advice on how to become enlightened. He could as well just fuck off. PSST. Kitsuki. Bakugo saw his classmate calling out to him and he averted a lazy eye to the side, snarling under his breath. "The fuck do you want, boner face?" The young man grimaced. "My name is Mitsuda. Don't remember fucking asking. Asshole. Just wanted to ask if you know what's up with Izuku." "Fuck if I know." It annoyed him. After an argument with his mother, the sniveling, whiny, and always cloud-eyed Midoriya went to sleep on his floor yesterday night and woke up this morning looking as though he had discovered the key to eternal life. If not immortality, then the key to endless bliss, at least. Jealous that he's suddenly the class chick magnet. Who would give a fuck about that? Mitsuda gestured. The bunch of boys were looking daggers at Midoriya, most of the guys for starters. Who knew all Midoriya needed to be to become a chick magnet was to be happy? Kitsuki shot the nerd in question a sidelong glance. Anyone with eyes could see that the youngster wasn't acting, from the tone of his laughter to the lightness of his steps and animated motions of his limbs. False joy was simple to detect. To be truly happy meant to completely disregard his own social awkwardness and fear. A callousness towards his own timidity and uncertainty. He was indifferent to the views or perceptions of others. It didn't matter how much someone loved or despised him, it didn't put any weight on their shoulders. The nerd was blindly certain in his happiness. It wouldn't take an eyeball to tell you that real self-confidence was hot as hell. Midoriya-kun. The lunch break came to an end when the bell rang. As girls from all classes were forced to depart, there were many sighs and complaints, and Midoriya Izuku found himself back in his seat, humming a little melody to himself. Kitsuki glanced at him from the corner of his eye. "Something bothering you, Kakin? You deal with your shit." Izuku gave a nod. "Ka-chan and I are going for family music classes start Saturday. Then family baking class on Sunday. We're trying to find some room for finger painting and yoga." Kitsuki remarked, "Too much info. Just wanted to make sure you did what you needed to." Once more, the bastard's smile nearly caused him to go blind. Fuck. Turn off your teeth, Izuku. Referring to gleaming teeth. You know, you and Mitsuki-san could join us, not a fucking chance. Izuku positioned his hands behind his head. You ever wonder why we never hear about All Might's wife? All Might doesn't have a fucking wife. What are you on about? Izuku grinned, yeah. We never hear of his kids either. Or family. To become the most exceptional hero. The boy's eyes shifted. I wonder how lonely he is. He wasn't bothered by Izuku the remainder of the lesson. Rather, he buried his nose in books. Fresh ones. Thick ones. Books with a textbook appearance. Katsuki tried to concentrate on her studies as well. Should focus solely on the teacher's words as they were being said. Must quit obsessing about those foolish 6 words. There were several risks associated with being a pro hero. He knew that with a fuck. There was always the possibility that a villain might decide to strike you right in the most painful place because everyone knew your true name, birthday, and, in certain situations, where you fucked lived, ate, and shat. That was why so many heroes had perished. Some of them weren't even big shots, they were just up-and-comers who took down one villain without a name, only for the villain's friends to exact retribution by unexpectedly showing up at the hero's house and fucking shit up. Pro heroes married other pro heroes as a form of protection because of this, however it only slightly increased the likelihood that the union would fail. Death was a given in the industry, frequently as certain as corporate merchandise. You said the music classes are on Saturday. That afternoon, Izuku blinded him for the second time with his bullshit teeth. A specific remark he had been anticipating the biology lesson. Specifically, he had been anticipating their utilization of the lab. As they entered the room with white walls, he could sense the slight scent of sterilized air and bleach. His ears were attuned to the faintest sounds of gossip and conversation, twitching every now and then when his name was called out. Dopamine and serotonin were still being produced and renewed by his body. The price of playing with the chemistry of his own body was slightly restless fingers that constantly drummed to a beat of their own. They rattled away at his sides. Pair up. We're going to be doing some dissection today. The person to your left is your partner for this exercise. There were moans of displeasure in response to the teacher's pronouncement. The sound of laughing erupted in his throat, which he had to suppress. A female in his class served as his partner. He thought her name was Suzume. She didn't want to make eye contact. She tapped her hands against the hem of her skirt and he saw that they were moving erratically. Remember, lab safety is always first. Even rinsing his hands beneath chilly water couldn't stop him from humming happily. He discovered himself gradually biting his bottom lip while silently instructing his mind to limit serotonin production. It was not the time for giddiness in the lab. Granted, even if he were delirious, his quirk would ensure the accuracy of his incisions and cuts. The rubber gloves snugly pressed against his skin. His companion was holding hers. Suzume-san, are you ready? Actually I think I should get a different partner. Something wrong? She gave her shoulders a rub. Her cheeks had reddened. She was breathing erratically. From where he stood, he could hear her heartbeat. Quickly. Pulsing. Throbbing inside her chest. Do you mind? Suzume. The student in his class who specifically asked to be transferred away from Kaken because she was constantly agitated when she sat next to him. A girl who detested sitting next to Mitsuda just as much. He closed his eyes and muttered a curse beneath his breath. Put an end to happiness. Izuku felt sick from the withdrawal of feel-good chemicals. His motivation to stay in the class was vanished. To proceed with something. He would be better off dying and sparing himself a meaningless life. Use little dopamine. A constant height. Not devoid of happiness, but not overindulged in it either. The girl next to him sighed with relief. How did you do that? Sorry. Most people can't just fine-tune their emotions like that. His mouth pushed close to hers. It felt worse for you? Pulling on her gloves, she looked at the table and the rat specimen that was on it. It felt like my heart was going to explode. So much happiness and warmth. It was overwhelming. Izuku winced. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't dislike it. He made an effort to look away from the girl with the auburn hair. The rat stuck to the surface. The stark white floor glistened in his mirror image. The light bulbs are fluorescent. The white ceiling. Anywhere, except on her face, please. The instructor went around the classroom explaining the scientific method and outlining the appropriate frame of mind required for carrying out scientific research. A few lads who were playing with their rat were chastised by him. Chastised a few girls who treated the animal more carelessly than excrement. The man's words seemed to blend together, as Izuku noticed. The room grew ever more gloomy. Deeper. It was everything lacking in color. When the happy flood subsided, his mental state reverted to something strange. The teacher's tirade seemed to bother him little, he realized. Little thought was given to the pupils, who would probably never use this class again. Little thought was given to the group of white rodents that would ultimately be killed for scientific research, serving only as a teaching tool for a group of inattentive kids to learn the ins and outs of rodent anatomy. Wouldn't it be hilarious if a stranger or higher power showed up and set them down on a table? Muttering and laughing as their own existence was turned into a lesson for impressionable, uninterested youth. Then maybe it wouldn't be so funny. Maybe he would locate the most heartless people and treat them the same way as lab rats for meaningless experiments in an attempt to equalize the injustice of the nature of peculiarities in society. Go back. Suzume grasped his with a gloved hand. He looked at her, half-closed eyes. Something was in her eyes. Worried. Inquisitiveness. Concerned. Odd. What might make her want him? She put her hand on his and shouted, back. Return. He growled. To the happy you. This you it's scary. You're scaring me. Oh, look, in my hand, he said, holding out his palm. He breathed into his empty palm, saying, all the reasons I care. Gone. Just like that. Was she being scared by him? What a very insightful detail that didn't make his day any better. Was it his responsibility that she had a birth defect that made it possible for her to sense other people's feelings? He was unable to experience any feelings at all at the moment. His emotional state was not very frightening. He was just indifferent. He showed no concern for her. Had little affection for his classmates. Not overly concerned about anything or anyone. He was indifferent to his dreams. Feel joyful. The gates of bliss opened and he chased away the last wandering idea before it came. Beside him, Suzume trembled a little and released his fingers as though she had been scorched. Sorry. I'm sorry did I get help Midoriya? She excused herself from the class by asking the teacher for permission. For a brief moment, Midoriya mitigated his absence of a spouse. It didn't affect him at all. Later on, he would offer Suzume a small gesture of his remorse. She couldn't figure out why he had to do the actions that he did. He could not criticize her response. The rat was ready to be dissected as it lay on the table. Izuku took up a scalpel and began working while singing a lively melody to himself. Eventually, his teacher and classmates would assemble, all intent on his process. It was simple and crude to dissect a rat, but it was more difficult to open its skull without killing it and test its motor reflexes by poking its brain. With their simpler systems, brain surgery was easier on smaller animals like rats. His peculiarity directed his hands and completed the information gaps. I could change some stuff around here and add some new ones. After his operation was finished and the wounds were sutured, he realized he was the only person to dissect a rat without killing it. Even though his small white mouse was still alive, the changes he made to its brain would not become apparent until it had fully recovered. His sensei cleared his throat, Midoriya-kun. What did you do to that rodent? Just a minor surgery to tweak its parasympathetic nervous system, sensei. Izuku grumbled. A surgery? With school equipment. Izuku remarked, I'll come back to check up on him. Do you mind sensei? No. Not at all. Do as you will, Midoriya. He had completed his surgery and his teacher and pupils were behaving strangely. Though his name was still barely audible on their lips, the way they said it had changed. Midoriya walked out of the classroom, humming a little song to himself, concluding that in the end, it didn't matter. Rather, he was pleased to learn that his peculiarity could actually make it possible for him to execute difficult jobs like surgery flawlessly. His quirk benefited him in some areas where he was ignorant, but it was not useful at all when he had no knowledge at all. His hands moved as though he was being controlled by someone outside of himself, giving his nerves the muscle memory necessary to carry out a task he was only vaguely familiar with. In order to become even more proficient in the field, he would have to watch and listen to recordings of increasingly complex operations so that he could imitate them. The more he observed, the greater his knowledge base grew and the more extensive his peculiarity developed. He arrived at one of the school's water fountains and drank from it, letting his thoughts wander and grow. His brain's neuroplasticity had increased as a result of using precision. His capacity for information absorption, digestion, and learning. Furthermore, he had acquired a type of subconscious pattern identification that he was just now starting to understand. All the while, his mind was taking in the nuances of the universe, remembering and logging everything, and without any conscious effort on his part, objects that appeared to be related began to cluster together, a clear case of cause and effect unfolding in front of him. There was a wealth of information in the corridor, and his mind was using only that knowledge to highlight and project what would happen over the following few minutes. The student was walking forward mindlessly, carrying a stack of papers. The girls were discussing about a female celebrity's fashion choices while clipping their nails in the corner. A youngster with a strange smoking habit smiled as the asthmatic student coughed and puffed angrily at his empty inhaler. The period of Midoriya Izuku dragged. Boy pulls open the window. Strong wind. Heading south. Papers shoot skyward. Up the skirts. Blinded. Slips. Falls, landing face first. Izuku gave a blink. He watched the events unfold, lazily staring. Swinging open the windows, the asthmatic ran to them. The girls tugged down their skirts, squealing. The boy carrying the piles of papers slipped and his papers shot upward. His path of landing, oh my fucking god. Izuku grimaced slightly and closed one eye. Whoa. And I thought shit like this only happened in ecchi manga. It was a voice from behind him. Over the sound of hard slaps being meted out to the fortunate or unlucky pervert, as it were, Mitsuda whistled faintly. Nice panties ladies. Fuck off Minoru. Izuku gave a blink. Move 3 inches to your left. Huh. Now. Mitsuda followed his instructions. A baseball smashed into a wall after tearing through the open window and through the space where his head had been. What the fuck? The boy lowered his head, causing Izuku's mouth to quiver. It's fine, Mitsuda-san. Since when can you see the future? Izuku's lips were pursed. I can't. Bullshit. What was that then? With an uneasy smile, he attempted, predicting outcomes based on recognizing patterns in an established system. I'm just figuring out the kinks of it myself. Mitsuda gave him a squint. You. His eyes grew wide. Don't tell me you used your quirk on your brain. I did. Mitsuda gave a whistle. You haven't gone psycho yet, so I'm assuming you did something right. What's it like? I can change and set my emotional states at will. My brain picks up on information faster. I have memories of being born and I can't forget the odd pattern on a falling leaf I saw this morning because it landed on a crack that wasn't on the road before. Mitsuda whistled once again, memories of controlling emo. He slapped his fists together, saying, damn. So that's why you've been in a good mood all day. And here I was thinking you got laid or something. Mitsuda's gaze widened. Oh wait, if you can control all aspects of your brain, doesn't that mean that when you sleep you'll always have lucid dreams you can control? I guess. And doesn't that mean you can make yourself hallucinate on command? Why would I want to make myself hallucinate? Mitsuda had a cunning smile. Instant sexy daydream. If you could give yourself audio, visual and tactile hallucinations that would be epic. Go on, test it out. He was wary of doing experiments involving self-induced hallucinations. What am I supposed to hallucinate? Try tactile hallucinations. Make yourself feel something that isn't happening. Like someone rubbing your hands. Izuku Midoriya closed his eyes. He saw it exactly as Mitsuda had urged. He was about to think of it when he felt a hand gently brush his arm. That's not funny Mitsuda. What? Stop rubbing my arm. I'm not. Izuku suddenly opened his eyes. Mitsuda made an innocent motion with his hands in the air. Izuku realized he could still feel his hand as he continued to stare at it. He can still feel someone stroking his palm very softly and lightly. That, Izuku-kun, Mitsuda responded, is the frightening power of the human brain. Do you have any other ideas for things I could do? Mitsuda tapped his chin with his index finger and hummed. Well, you could turn your mind palaces into actual palaces by throwing visual hallucinations into the mix. You could make yourself drunk or high on command, which would be pretty cool for party tricks, or just close your eyes and imagine getting a blowjob and viola. Your figment of your imagination arrives and starts to do the deed. Though, if it feels real, is it still a figment of your imagination? Any useful ideas? Arms crossed, Mitsuda said. Prude. Whatever. How about you try giving yourself synesthesia? Synesthesia. Mitsuda shrugged, you know. Smelling colors. Tasting sounds. That whole stuff. I doubt it'll be all that useful, but it's a new experience. The kid said. Man, I'm so freaking jealous. Wish I could rent your quirk for a day. All I can do is gain some muscle and facial hair and turn horny. Izuku said, maybe you could try extending your quirk. Outwards. What do you mean? Like midnight. Maybe you could make yourself secrete pheromones or a strong scent. The kid speculated. I mean, I'm not sure it would work, but the taller boy's expression fell. The look on a man's face after learning something revolutionary. Pheromones, secrete, he mumbled. That could work. Sorry, Midoriya, I need to see you around. With a grumble to himself similar of Izuku's own habit, Mitsuda left. Alright, I believe I've given Mitsuda some food for thought. Izuku looked at his watch just to be sure he knew how many hours remained in the day. He needed everything to go smoothly so he could follow his aim, which was to meet with Psycho. Izuku clenched his fist, fortifying his thoughts. Whatever it takes. A specific remark, it was a rather upscale restaurant. Remarkably, since it seemed that a reservation was required in order to secure a seat, she was almost certain that Midoriya Izuku had sent her the incorrect address through SMS. She realized there was no mistake when she looked inside and saw him sitting there, still wearing his school uniform, a smile on his face, and a gentle gesture towards her. He stood up, gave her a startling act of chivalry, took her right hand, and planted a gentle chaste kiss on her fingers. Hello, Enteli-san, he said. For a few moments, she wasn't sure if she was going to encounter the same Midoriya Izuku that she had seen the day before. When the boy pretended to assist her with her seat, she became even more skeptical. He had a peculiar charm in that he always had a big smile on his face while performing his customary deeds of chivalry. Both customary and incredibly surprising. You've certainly gone to a great deal of effort to impress me. I want to change the system. Not a preface. No protracted preamble. The hands of Midoriya Izuku were steepled and he wore a false facade of professionalism along with his courteous grin. Saiko realized right away that she had misinterpreted the boy's motivations. Misinterpreted his invitation for her to come here. This was hardly a friendly gathering. She reached for the menu, opened it and gave it a cursory glance, asking, "Doesn't everyone?" Midoriya's right palm tightened. Most people seem content with how things are. Heroes. Villains. Quirks that cause you misfortune or decide your destiny. I can't accept it. I can't accept a world where my entire life is determined by an ability I didn't choose at birth. I hear it everywhere, all the time. My mother, she wasn't born with a flashy quirk and she chose a simple life for it. My friend, Kitsuki, because he was born with a flashy quirk, everyone told him he'd make a great hero, and I don't think he's ever even considered that he could be anything else but that. But Suda he wants to become an adult film star because he's worried his quirk will get him into trouble if he tries to just take a normal job. Even I never believed that I could do anything because I didn't have a quirk. The whole world, everyone, we have it in our heads that we are nothing but the sums of the ability we are born with. I don't want that. I hate that. We are so much more than just our quirks. She shut off the menu. What are you going to do about it? He held up his palms, saying, equal the playing field. If I could study more, learn more about the quirk factor, I'll think about how to create inhibitor devices or something biological like serums medication. Serums that inhibit people's quirks. As a temporary stopgap measure, he clarified. To make life easier for people with troublesome quirks. If there was something, like over-the-counter medication that was globally available, people like Mitsuda who are born with quirks that'd otherwise make them have difficult lives could live without fear or worry. The waitress came up, holding a pen. Tea. Chamomile. Speaking on his behalf, Midoriya said, "A water will be fine, thank you." After the waiter left, she started her cross-examination. As inspiring as your motives are, Midoriya-kun, you're forgetting something. Quirks are a power status. With the end of pre-quirk society, a new arms race began. The superhuman arms race. Quirks and heroes are the nuclear armaments of society. Can you imagine a society where anti-nuclear devices can be found at every corner drugstore? Where all that is needed for a layman to take down a god is to purchase some pills from a pharmacy. Midoriya stated, "I'll make it work based on intent." You're surely jesting. If the anti-quirk serum detects a strong resistance, it'll fail to take effect. So people can't abuse it, can't use it on those who aren't willing. Psycho chuckled. So, what, you want to invent drugs that require consent to work? Do you realize how ridiculous that sounds? Human biology isn't that convenient, Midoriya-kun. He was not bothered. There are quirks that allow people to manipulate forces like time, space and gravity. Quirks that allow people to interfere with laws of physics. Is a drug that works based on a person's mental willingness any less ridiculous than someone who can change the weather with a punch or create a black hole with a finger? Her lips were pursed. I'll admit, when you put it that way it does seem feasible. She exhaled. Of course, all of this is mostly conjecture, but assuming you do somehow succeed in creating this anti-quirk medication, I assume you have other plans for quirk society. Several, Midoriya enthusiastically nodded his head. I've been thinking of ways to abolish the entire hero and villain system entirely. Devices that can use algorithms to predict the likelihood of a crime occurring and prevent it before it does. An entire revamp of the country's architecture that'll increase efficiency and productivity. A method of highlighting and cultivating the individual talents in people and calculating the best ways for them to achieve happiness and satisfaction. It seems I underestimated your ambition. I've always been stubbornly ambitious. Just for the most part, I focused my ambition on becoming a hero. You make it sound like you've given up that ambition. I haven't. Psycho furrowed her brow. You still want to be a pro-hero? Most of my plans won't work without public support and approval. The fastest way to get that is to be a hero, even if I do intend to make the system obsolete. He clarified. Also, there are pro-heroes who have part-time jobs, such as Cementus and Best Jeanist. Being a pro-hero will also allow me access to amazing people and places much better than if I tried to do it all alone. The waitress showed up. There was a glass of cold water on Midoriya's end. The tea she ordered arrived in a sophisticated floral-patterned cup on her end. When the Pakage milk and cubed sugars arrived in a smaller cup, she gave the server a grateful nod. Tell me, Midoriya-kun, you seem to have your plan all figured out. So, what role exactly do I play in all of this? You want to make things better, don't you? I have my own goals, Midoriya-kun. My own plans and my own methods. For the most part, none of your goals clash with mine, but that does not mean I'm interested in a partnership. Midoriya's mouth fell open. You're not. I know what you want. Funding. Support. But from the standpoint of an investor, all you have are grand plans with no means to achieve them. Scientists are still researching and discovering new things about the quirk factor. So far, no one has discovered a breakthrough that'll allow them to create an anti-quirk serum. You expect me to believe that a boy who's still in middle school and has zero research experience will somehow crack the code within what, months? Years? Those scientists aren't me. I can't. So, you're saying you, Midoriya Izuku, middle schooler, are superior to the world's greatest scientists? I'm not. But my quirk. Psycho picked up her cup gently and said, precision, yes. I know your quirk, Midoriya-kun. And I'm telling you, even with your quirk, it'll take you several decades to be able to create the drug you're dreaming of. If at all you succeed, assuming your life isn't cut short by your insistence on becoming a pro-hero, or assuming you do not somehow arouse the ire of some villain that leaves you crippled or incapacitated. That won't happen. You're not clairvoyant, Midoriya. It's easy to fall prey to the survivorship bias and believe you're special. The numbers insist otherwise. Psycho raised her hand. That aside, drugs typically require several years of testing and verifying by the government. The odds are higher that the government will bury it in bureaucratic red tape for years upon years, while utilizing it in military campaigns as a secret weapon against foreign powers. It'll be a miracle if your drug ever sees the light of day at all. What are you saying? She motioned in their direction and said, the status quo doesn't like to be changed. The nail that sticks out will be hammered down. While it's great to have such lofty ambitions, I can't invest in optimism and ambition alone. Perhaps if you had something tangible that proves you can create what you claim you can, I'd have considered it. Unfortunately, Midoriya-kun, all you have are words. Something in his demeanor changed. She saw instantly that his eyes become half-lidded. He had a carefree, even dangerous, posture. A spark of something in his semi-focused, half-lidded gaze gave her an unwelcome shiver down her spine. For an instant, she sensed a significant shift in the atmosphere around him, as if he had been replaced by a double. He said, so, in a drawn-out speech. You're saying you don't believe I can do it? Her lips were pursed. Midoriya, are you altering your mental state? You didn't answer my question. Clearly in control of his mental condition, she observed. Interested. It detailed how she came to have the confidence to carry out deeds of chivalry while being a shy and awkward boy. Listen, Midoriya-kun. If there was, somehow, a person out there who managed to devise a serum that could inhibit or stop quirks, that person would be feared. Governments, society, individuals with personal stakes, all would be filled with dread at the existence of such a person and try to eliminate them. They would have created something which could completely upend society and civilization as we know it. They would become, simultaneously, the most powerful and most wanted in the world. Midoriya-kun, do you believe you have what it takes to bear that burden? The boy's head tipped forward, unafraid. Whatever it takes. She hadn't anticipated receiving a response so quickly. Forgive me, Midoriya-kun, but you don't strike me as the type of person willing to compromise his own beliefs for the sake of a goal. Sacrifice yourself, perhaps. But sacrifice others? That's the second time you've doubted me, Psycho-san. She ran her fingertips along the bridge of her nose. You obstinate little one, you know. She recalled that Midoriya Izuku had a twisted mentality and could not bear it when someone else showed no faith or belief in them. Her doubts about his conviction would just make him turn away from her even more. She went for her bag and pulled out her phone, saying, all right, Midoriya. If you believe you're up to the task of upending society, I'll send you in the right direction. She murmured under her breath and pressed a few buttons. I've just sent you the coordinates of a location I suspect to be the known trading spot of an individual that sells the black market quirk enhancement drug commonly known as Trigger. His eyebrows lifted. His expression screwed up in obvious surprise as his demeanor suddenly softened and shifted. What? Trigger is a quirk-enhancing drug, but it comes with the downside of reducing higher brain function and intellect of those who use it, throwing them into a berserk aggressive state. If you so believe yourself capable of alchemy, then analyze the substance and dilute it. Create a pure version of it that works without the mental drawbacks. She continued. If you can't even manage this basic level of chemistry, you might as well give up on creating your consent drugs. The boy remained silent. His snout was twisted. Wrinkled brows. Hands, deep in contemplation. She obviously neglected to clarify that this work went well beyond the scope of basic chemistry. Famous for its potent effects, Trigger was said to have originated in Japan. Numerous people have attempted to decipher the formula for a drink that could instantly increase a person's quirk factor. Researchers in labs all across the world were at a loss as to how to separate Trigger's mind-altering properties from its quirky factor-boosting component. The man who created the medication trigger was an acknowledged chemical genius deserving of a Nobel Prize. Psycho compared this once-in-a-lifetime genius to Hawking or Einstein during the pre-QUIRK era. Theories said that the person's peculiar ability to change chemical bonds at the atomic level was the sole explanation for how they were able to produce trigger in the first place. Essentially, she was assigning Midoriya a very challenging assignment from the beginning. Not that he is aware of it. She got up from her chair and gave herself a tidy pat. "Once you've succeeded, Midoriya-kun, I'll believe that you're serious about this. I'll invest all my family's fortune in you. Anything at all you want. But if you fail to succeed at this," she ended the sentence without saying anything. "I'll be seeing you, Midoriya-kun. Extend my greetings to Mitsuda-kun. A specific remark most coveted and powerful person on the planet." Walking, Midoriya Izuku's body moved automatically. With his hands in his pockets, he steered clear of pedestrians and obstacles while he mentally relived his encounter with Psycho 1,000,000 times. The likelihood that the government will bury it in red tape and bureaucracy is higher. On the cobblestone pavement, he kicked a stone. There was no comfort in the lengthy streets for him. He wasn't sure if Psycho was being overly negative or if he had been overly hopeful about the strategy he intended to employ to achieve his objectives. His only desire was to assist those whose peculiarities remained on the edge of danger. Those whose peculiarities compelled them to lead a specific lifestyle. And all for the sake of giving these individuals a little respite from the hardships of everyday existence, a mission that would put him in the crosshairs of the whole world. It is irrelevant. You've made up your mind already. Whatever is necessary. Izuku, do whatever it takes. You will carry out this task. Midoriya scratched the back of his skull, sighing. During the conversation, his body's production of dopamine and serotonin had decreased. His remarks had upset and hurt him, Psycho. At Psycho's deficiency of faith in him. He was sufficiently upset to go to a lower emotional state by default. That's when he found it hard to feel anything or anyone for that matter. He dubbed it the apathy state. Sometimes, it was strangely pleasant to not care. He couldn't, however, remain in that state for very long because the indifference had a tendency to be fairly indiscriminate. Psycho-sen said the alley on Hirohito Street is the location. All of Midoriya's drug experience came from using painkillers during his bullying episodes. He was vaccinated against many viruses and diseases that were thought to be extremely deadly in the past when he was younger. With the exception of those two incidents, he had little experience with medicines or medication. He had never before purchased over-the-counter vitamins, let alone the necessary medications for a cold. He was now combing the streets late at night in an attempt to get a quirk enhancer on the illegal market. Set off. Midoriya's mind sifted through data, looking for any memories or information he might have on the subject. Fragments of newspaper he'd skimmed. Idle talks while watching a news story on TV. Radio talk shows featuring anti-drug efforts. His mind kept a record of every allusion and every usage of the word trigger. He inhaled deeply and told his brain to project the knowledge onto a visual hallucination that appeared before him. The delusion seemed quite realistic. The panels before him seemed to be employing a high-tech holographic gadget to reproduce memories and images of his experience with the word trigger. As he started to go through the bits of information, his body operated automatically. Newspaper stories discussing trigger, a new medicine, and its risks, pop-up ads for quirk-boosting medication appear on Mitsuda's porn sites. Talk show host talking about trigger on Kaken's home TV in the background. He turned right so as not to run into a couple on the street. Trigger is well known for enhancing personal quirks. Individuals with less offensive quirks tend to use it more frequently. The duration of the strain varies, with some variants lasting a few minutes and others up to several hours. The reason for the differences in strain efficiency is up for debate, but there are arguments for mixing prototype batches with pure batches. Izuku Midoriya muttered under his breath as he reorganized the floating information panels. Justifications for the drugs increased aggression, including the correlation between quirk factor and aggression in research. Research refuted allegations that claimed trigger was mass-produced for military use and employed as a super serum. After dodging a lamppost and nodding encouragingly to a passing policeman, Izuku started to scratch the back of his skull, trying to make sense of more data. Trigger has ties to the Japanese Yakuza. Mentions of the expanding Yakuza force in Japan, press stories highlighting the decline in gang-related violence, various Yakuza organizations being unified under a single worldwide force. Stopping in the middle of the road, Midoriya fixed his gaze on the name that seemed to float there. Rewired for subconscious pattern recognition, his brain was telling him, in some manner, that the drug trigger was directly tied to the floating name. Shai Haseikai. Shai Haseikai is a national Yakuza organization with 8 precepts, known as the 8 and dangerous ambitions. Its members are unknown. Mentioned on a watchlist of villains and mentioned in poisonous quarantined online forums, Izuku gave his head a quick rub. Relax, Izuku. Relax. All he had to do was buy their merchandise. That was it. Not that he was going to engage in combat with them. All he wanted was their merchandise. He turned right again, making sure he was really at one of the addresses Psycho had sent to his phone. With its abundance of empty beer cans and snuffed cigarettes, this alley was darker than most. Izuku moaned as he moved deeper into the alley in an attempt to find someone, trying his best not to trip on one or two condoms. I have no idea how much the medication is supposed to cost. At least he still had his lunch money. He hoped that would suffice. Hello? The alley was empty of people. Drug dealer-san. He became more and more aware that there was an awful stink coming from within the farther he went inside, away from the light. His eyes instantly became wet. Despite his initial want to gag, he was able to suppress it. It was an awful stench, and as it blended with the blood fragrance, it was getting worse. Midoriya felt time slip away from her. Blood. An excessive amount of blood. Massive blood loss. Something dark and shadowy. Throw away the beer can. Plunge. To the left. Yes. Discard. His oddity blended into reality. He cocked his head to avoid getting hit by the empty beer can that was thrown at him. He spun just in time to avoid the knife that lunged out of the darkness and towards his neck. He bent to the left to avoid the right swing and took a stride to the right, avoiding the left swing. Just moments before impact, his right hand raised and removed the knife from his assailant's grasp. His rapid heartbeat was audible to him. The knife just inches from his cranium. His body was overcome with a strong desire to kill, causing an adrenaline rush. It was the unexpected surge of adrenaline that caught Midoriya off guard. There was so much of it that the force of the blood pouring through his body caused him to genuinely smile. He couldn't recall the last time he had engaged in any activity that caused his heart to race. Are you the dealer? The female who attacked him had almost the same appearance as him. Her chin began to ooze blood, covering her bare body. Nudie made an effort to maintain eye contact. He did, however, manage to catch a glance of what was below, and that was all it needed for the image to remain etched in his mind forever. His body was producing a specific hormone, which told him he loved what he saw. He pushed the ideas away and cleared his mind. The girl bit her fingers tenderly and chuckled, her expression twisted into one that made Midoriya uneasy. I'm going to kill you. Wait, you really shouldn't. She lunged towards him. She came running towards him. Izuku let out a moan. He had spent a long time sparring with Katsuki Bakugo. Your motions are slow in comparison to someone who might use explosions to increase his speed and change directions and activities at any time. Sluggish and steady. He dodged beneath her first blow, drawing on memories from his childhood of watching martial arts films and the few moments he'd seen of mixed martial arts and wrestling. His years of witnessing and experiencing bullying have given him an awareness of the tactics and strength required to bully someone. Her pathetic defenses were smashed aside by his hand as he moved in close, turning her around and slamming her onto the ground while holding both of her hands behind her back. To make sure she couldn't get away, he pressed his knee to her back. He apologized in a bashful manner. You're actually the first person who's tried to kill me. A lot of people will be sad if I die, and I have a lot of things I want to accomplish, so I can't really hold back against someone who wants to take my life. She made an effort to struggle. Attempted to escape. He refused to give her the chance. Can you stop? This is kind of awkward because you're not wearing any clothes, and if someone came along they might think I was doing something bad. From the perspective of an outsider, Izuku realized he was in danger. There was no amount of explanation that could explain why he was on top of a nude girl and had pinned her to the ground. Hello Izuku. He said. Midoriya Izuku. What's yours? The girl remained silent. Izuku inquired, is there a problem you have? I don't believe people just try to kill others without reason. Especially strangers. If you're in trouble or need any help I can help you out. The young lady chuckled. You're so funny Izuku-kun. Izuku scowled. Why did you try to kill me? Let me go and I'll show why. Does it have something to do with your quirk? Izuku-kun says the funniest things. He sighed, scratching the back of his head, so it does have to do with your quirk. Another one. Folks who were unique do of their peculiarities. Do you know where the trigger dealer in this area is supposed to be? He's gone. Gone. The young lady sang. Gone. Izuku looked off into the distance. On the floor, he could see an outline that looked slightly human. Both human and immobile. Deceased. 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 Murder. Killer. Crime. Murder. Give her over. Law enforcement. Make an arrest. Correct action. The proper course of action. It was the appropriate decision to give the cops a call right away. To permit her arrest by the cops. Remove her. She caused someone's death. Ended a person's life. What possible defense could she offer? Not one. Not at all. It was unacceptable. There was absolutely no reason to take a human life. The cops would seize the body if he called them right now. Additionally, they would remove the body's trigger. Furthermore, it would raise concerns. Exams. How could he have known that it was so late at night in this remote alleyway? Could he tell them anything? Had he been taking a walk? Would he lie? Would he be honest with them and say he came here to acquire drugs? It would be in his file. That kind of thing could be linked to him. Even though it was small, it would eventually have an impact on him. What if that made it harder for him to get into UA? What would happen if it was brought up later as a point of contention against him? Act morally. The appropriate action. The appropriate action. Removing a killer from society would be the morally correct thing to do. But at what price? At what price to his future? Would he improve or preserve the lives of dozens of individuals at the expense of their suffering? That trigger was what he needed. He had to investigate it, study it, and show Psycho that he was competent. Show that he was genuinely committed to carrying out his word. Whatever is necessary. Now he felt bad about disclosing her his name. If he hadn't taken that action, he could have cleared his own record. Pull the trigger, tie her up, and then give the police an anonymous tip so they can come get her. Now that she knew his name, he was unable to do that. When the cops asked her how she was tied up, she had no excuse not to tell them his name. He spoke gently and said, "I'm going to let you go. Please don't attack me. You've already killed someone. I might break your limbs if you attack me, if only so you can't use them to kill anyone ever again." The girl trembled at what he said. He closed his eyes and released a quick rasping breath. With caution, he got up from her back. Without warning, she whirled around and swung her lips at him. His right hand jerked into motion, hitting her lower jaw with his palm. Her eyes lost their brightness. She passed out and fell to the ground, and he moved aside. With a sigh, Midoriya took one final look at the girl before moving closer to the trigger dealer's body and hardening his resolve. Whatever is necessary. Thanks for watching guys, that's it for today, so hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please leave a like, share and subscribe.